It's a podcast.
Sorry, I had to.
That's our intro.
Yes, it's a podcast.
We're a podcast. It's me, Keith.
It's
me,
Andrew.
Colonel RPG.
I've been triple guessing what to. Oh, we'll get to that later. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Keith.
Hello, Toaster.
Hello, I'm submissive and podcastable.
Whoa.
Oh my god.
I've been navigating
What a
social
catchphrase.
spaces that make me triple guess what name I should use lately.
What? What does that even mean?
And that has been confusing.
Do you
My
have
name Toaster.
multiple names?
Hello.
Hello, Toaster.
Hello.
'Cause we went to a gay bar furry event like a couple days ago, and the entire time, every time I was introduced, I was like triple unsure about like which name to introduce myself with, and I kept introducing myself with a different name to every person we met, and I'm like, this is not helpful. This doesn't help anybody.
Sure, it does. You've now created 3 different versions of yourself that people will remember.
And it's like because I've been to furry events where people are in like partial suits and everyone's wearing their badges that have their character's name and picture on them and so on. So it's like it becomes more normal to use that name in that context. But when I'm just a dude in a tank top and no identifiable furry stuff at all, and most of the people talking to me are also just like people in like slightly more revealing clothing than normal, but no furry coded stuff, but there is like a background noise of people in like there were suits there and other elements that, because this was a furry event, but it wasn't, but you know, not everyone normally has that stuff on. Increasing those like we human names, right? Normal
No.
human.
No.
It feels intuitive to just be like, hi, I'm Jerry.
No. You use the name. Well, so the thing with you that makes it difficult is that even your online furry presence uses your real name.
Yes.
So it's like, so for you, like the separation between Marrow and Keith is pretty high. Whereas for me, everyone knows me as Toaster. So I'm gonna go by Toaster. Like, even if I'm not in suit, I'm Toaster, because that's how they get in contact with me. And that's the persona that I have, and I wear
and you're
when
like,
I'm
and you know
around
these
them.
people from other gatherings in the past through like Telegram and other things. So you're like, oh yes, they all know you as Toaster. This is an ongoing thing. And then between that and your online presence being Toaster, and everyone just used to you calling you Toaster the same way that we call Bird and not his real name, like it's so reflexive to call you Toaster that you don't question it half the time. And I think you've said that you spend more time being called Toaster than your real name now.
Yes, I do.
But for me, like I'm just known as me originally, and then I like did the furry stuff and opened up about that stuff and got a character, and like that's been fun, and I have that character everywhere. But I'm still like, everyone largely knows me by my name, and it's a thing where it's like, if somebody calls me Marrow, I do not question it for even a moment. You can just do that. But if someone asks me if they should call me Marrow, I reflexively push back slightly on that idea, because it feels like they're tiptoeing, like they feel like they need to respect my like name or something, and they're worried about calling me the wrong name, and they're gonna get in trouble if they don't call me Marrow or something. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Super doesn't matter. But I almost like reflexively go too far in the other direction, as if to distance myself from the name, which is not the point either. But it just feels weird when someone puts that much gravity on whether or not they should use the character's name or my real name, or call me Sebastian, which is a relic at this point, or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, it's similar to anything where you just ask like how someone wants to be called just to be safe. You don't want to be
just to be polite.
Assuming.
The blanket answer to everyone is I extremely don't care. It's like calling Andrew. It's like calling Andrew Knackle. You just do it.
I don't care.
Knackle just happens. Knackle just comes out of my mouth when I'm like playing a game. It's just
people literally like people used to just call me sad, and I would respond to that just like a regular word.
I remember hearing people calling you sad. I always felt it was so weird.
Yeah, like it's just, just like, yeah, okay, I'm sad.
Well, it's capital S,
I think
capital D.
Knackle is like a good call sign, and it's like it's like
is.
really sharp and very like legible. So if I'm like, if
Yeah.
we're in a game and I'm like, and I need to get your attention, we're playing fucking whatever, Overwatch or something, like I feel like being like Andrew is like harder to get your attention than if I'm just like Knackle, like do this, do thing.
Yeah.
So like
Just
that's
shouting at
that,
him,
it has a purpose, you know.
like his full name. Knackle,
but
son of
on the-
Knackle.
Well, that's technically the full username.
That
But,
is
but
one of
it
that is the
based
most
on-
cumbersome name ever.
It's so
I love
funny.
it. I love it because whenever people will ask me, like, you'll have instances where people are like, "We need to verify your email address," and there'll be people who just like look at it and there's like this pause, and as soon as I see the pause, I go, "Yeah, it's spelled right." Like I just can say that because like I know the fact that they pause to think about it is like, okay, yeah, then I put it right.
Like, what the fuck am I looking at?
Ankle? Are you Mr. Ankle?
Yeah,
you have to break
Ankleson.
it. There's so much breaking it down to do because of the fact that your name features it's multiple words mashed together end to end with
Yes.
no spaces, but also half of the words are not recognizable as words, so you can't tell where the words are stopping and starting.
Yeah.
It's great.
The,
It's fantastic.
It's funny though, because like if we were to meet, go to PAX or something and like meet Colonel in person, and he's
Oh,
like,
you guys
yeah,
are
like,
calling me
here's-
Colonel the whole time.
Yeah,
Like,
100%. Like I
I
could know your real name and would still just call you Colonel because it's like
I do know his
because
real
that's just your
name.
name.
you can call me my real name, but I do get a kick out of me. It's sort of like it's abstract in a way because obviously I don't refer to myself as Colonel RPG or Colonel very often. I do that
Yes.
every once in a while, but it's like I'm not an army kind of guy or anything. So I've
No.
never been to the army. So it's like
I've never
it's like-
been to the army.
yeah, it's just like it's completely detached from reality. But just going around and you guys calling me Colonel, I like that. That's a
Yeah.
good prospect for the future.
It's like a good nickname. It's a title. It's punchy. It's like
Yeah.
it immediately implies a relationship. Like I like it. It's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, you
Stolen
would just be Colonel
valor.
forever.
Exactly. But it's not. It's
no.
appropriated valor.
No, Colonel has put me through war. This is not stolen valor. We're allowed to call him Colonel. But yeah, I don't know.
Colonel
It's like
can
it's
never
interesting.
be
Like
forgiven.
there are other people, right? Like we have furry friends who we know their real life names, and like there are times where it's like, okay, do I call you your real name or do I call you like your character's name? And there are some people whose characters are really separate from them, that it's like, okay, I like shouldn't be calling this person by this furry name because that's just like an OC that they have, that they just like happen to have like a Twitter account for,
Yeah.
like that's slightly different. But like it's gotten to the point where at the house I'm so used to being called Toaster, and because like for example like brewing is not my husband's actual name, but everyone in the associated friend groups that we hang out with calls him Brew. So I just call him Brew. And it's like, it's so second nature that I it's like code switching. It's like speaking
interesting.
Spanish in one setting and English in another. Like it just happens.
Which you're used to doing.
based on the environment.
Except for Spanish.
Yes, I don't.
Wait,
I don't
that's-
speak
So that's
Spanish,
just
but-
normal English. What do you mean that you're used to doing?
Well, because he speaks several languages.
Yeah, he speaks several
Oh,
languages.
right.
So
I thought
like
you were saying
in
that
different.
you're used to this.
So it's like,
Okay,
it's just
sorry,
like what
I
you do in real
misunderstood.
life, except not with Spanish.
Yeah, I was meaning the concept of code switching. Like when you're in a bilingual environment, you speak
Yeah.
to the people who speak the language that is most well suited for them. So like if you have different names, like I'm not gonna go to my parents' house and be like, call me Toaster, Mom. This is my true identity. Like that's not like I don't care. I'm not ashamed of my real name. I just don't use it in these spaces. So when people call me Toaster, it's just like I'm called Toaster more often in my day-to-day than I am my real name, to the point that it's just like a nickname. And like when I was
Yeah.
growing up, I had we had a
Normalizing
friend-
just having fun names.
yeah. Like when I was growing up, we had a friend who we called Spock. He didn't look like Spock. He wasn't like a weird nerd. He wasn't like a Vulcan. I don't think he ever watched. I don't think we called it. I don't think he watched Star Trek. Just we called him Spock once, and the name stuck. And like I to this day don't know if I know his real name. Like I was friends with this guy for like probably 6 or 7 years, and he's just Spock in my brain. Same with there was a guy in college. I want to say his name was Ryan. I don't know because I spent 4 years in college calling him Crunchwrap because I met him at the dorms.
That's a fun one.
He was super stoned. He drove to Taco Bell, got a box of 48 Crunchwraps at 2 a.m,
Wow.
brought them back to the
What the
dorm and
fuck?
woke us all up and was like, "Hey guys, I bought
Pretty good.
Crunchwraps. Do you want a Crunchwrap?" And we were like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Hell
And then we
yes,
just
I
called
do.
him-
What the
We
fuck?
just called him Crunchwrap for the rest of college, and
Yeah.
I know him as Crunchwrap.
And this is pretty
So-
normal behavior, but it's even more normal online where like when I lived at Marty's house, all of our housemates were his guildmates that he adopted. Like he
Yeah.
adopted his WoW guildmates into his house that needed to live somewhere at some point. So we had 2 housemates that had the same real life name, but I would never remember what their real life name was, even though they both had the same one, because they both went by their WoW names every day, all the time in that house. And you just got
That's
you just got
really
used to
interesting.
that.
But I mean,
that's
I
a
assume
lot.
they were really engaged in WoW. They're the kind of players that spend the whole day, the whole week playing WoW, right?
Maybe, or at least at some point they did. When I played the previous expansion with Marty's guild, neither of them were there. But you know, you move on with life eventually. WoW's really
Yeah.
old, almost as old as
20
Knackle.
It's gonna be 20 years old next year.
Yeah, it's
Or
fucked up.
Yeah,
It's
I wanna
fucked up how
say,
old these
what?
things are.
Yeah, how old is that? I think I want to say.
I thought it was
Knackle.
2004, but it might be a little bit earlier.
Let's see how.
Easy to check though. We're all checking, including the viewers. The viewers are checking. It is from 2004 November. Although in Europe it came out in 2005 February. Because billing
So
and things.
yeah, that's not too bad. I think so. My Knackle name is like 20 something years old. It's like 20.
Is for context that because anyone that hasn't heard the story several times already, he had a character named Knackle,
Yeah.
and then he made another character that was named Knackle, son of Knackle.
No, it was just I had one character named
Didn't he
Knackle,
die?
and then I had a second character. No, because so I made a wood elf named Knackle in EverQuest, and then I liked the name because I think it was like just one of those lucky. Wow, that sounds really good. It's catchy. Whatever, all the compliments
Yeah.
Toaster gave.
So you had
And,
2 Knackles where one had 1 K and one had 2 Ks, which is why your
Yes.
long name is spelled with both of them.
Yeah, so when I needed to, because my old email address was fucking dumb. I'm not gonna say it. Anyways, my old email address was stupid. I needed a new one, and I combined both of them because I like both of those names. My original
saying.
username was the first character name I made in EverQuest, and also equally stupid. And I don't want to say it, but it's just so dumb. Such a childish name to give something like where you're so dumb and I don't know. You don't know words.
Yeah. It's okay. You
That's
don't need to
what-
justify the origin of Big Booby Mama. It's all right, Andrew.
That's fine.
That only happens because you weren't enough of a Tolkien buff growing up. Otherwise, you would have elven
No, man.
names
It was
like I
it
did.
was because like as a kid I was just hyper.
You totally missed the
cringe, where I
chance
was
to be one
like-
of 500 million users named
Yeah.
Fenrir.
right. Obviously.
XX Naruto Vampire Lord XX.
Wow. Getting close to Keith's original username.
The question I want to ask, Toaster, is why are you toasted ringtail? If you don't mind, or if
Just
that is...
for 1 second, I said that out loud, opened Twitter notifications, and the first thing I see is a reply from someone named Fenris, which is just incredible timing.
Yeah, my username is pretty simple. I thought that, well, first off, ringtail is colloquial for a raccoon. It's a thing that
raccoon.
people call raccoons. So it's like, for example, Sly Cooper is constantly referred to as a ringtail and the ringtail thief in his games. So I thought that was cute. And then Toasted because I'm brown.
That's I see.
So that was it. And
Ta-da!
I thought it was
I
clever.
thought it was.
It
I thought
is
it was 'cause you were
clever.
high.
Yeah.
And the
But it's
other
just
thing
close
is
it-
that
it's close it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say the other thing is that so legibly, like legibility wise, back when I was like, okay, my branding will be Toaster Ringtail, as in like Toaster the raccoon. Toaster ends with an R and Ringtail starts with an R. So it's really bad for searchability and like just legibility when I'm telling
Mhm.
people my name. So it's like, oh, okay, like having a username that is a title is more clear than having it just be my name. So I was like, okay, Toasted Ringtail, that's easy. It's not taken anywhere. Like I don't need to worry about that being taken. There are some platforms where I'm like Toaster Raccoon or like Toasted Raccoon, like things like that. But for the most part, like just Toasted Ringtail is like easy to get. It's like an easy username to grab. So I do. And of course, I had so like my persona has a full name. Like I have it on all of the things. My name is Toaster Williams, but
Mhm.
for some reason that branding like just didn't stick with people. I put a poll like on my Patreon and I asked a bunch of people. I was like, what do you think is like a better username searchability wise? What do you think is a little bit stronger for SEO? Should it be Toaster Williams, Toaster_Williams, or should it just be Toasted Ringtail? And universally everyone said like, just put your name as Toaster Williams, but put your username as Toasted Ringtail. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And that way I get double search engine optimization, because if people search my name, they find me. And if people search my username and my URL, they find me. So it's just like a win-win. So yeah, that's why I'm called Toasted Ringtail.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's it all makes sense. It's just a little bit confusing. Not after, because it doesn't matter really, but at first I was like, wait, is he toasted or did I mishear?
No, yeah.
Mandela effect?
Yeah, no, my
I could
name
have sworn it was
is
always
Toaster.
Yeah.
No, yeah. No, it's my name. My name is Toaster, but my username, the handle I go by is Toasted
Yeah.
Ringtail. Because it's punchy and it's easy to remember. But yeah, I mean, there was a period of time where I was like, I'm gonna rebrand entirely as Toaster Williams just because that's easier and people will like know my name. But it just Toasted Ringtail stuck. I think it's cute. It's more of a title than it is a name, so it's like easier to brand on things. So I just think of it as that's the name of my brand, and then Toaster is my actual name.
My extremely thought out process for naming my Let's Play channel was that Google Plus happened and showed everyone's real names, and I just never changed it.
Oh.
No one even remembers this, but once upon a time, Google Plus was YouTube and Google's like attempt to having like a competitor to Facebook and so on. And
Who doesn't
it did
remember?
not.
Babies.
Well, yeah,
It's babies
it was
who
a long
don't
time
remember.
ago. People don't remember. I got Gambit
People-
art,
that's
and no
true.
one recognized Gambit anymore, so I doubt they remember Google Plus.
Google,
Yeah.
they didn't even know it when it was around, let alone.
But when Google Plus was forcibly integrated into YouTube, and you didn't have a choice, if you had your name
Those were
on that
bad
system, it became your display name, and I just left it. So I've just had my name on my profile forever. And then additional weird forced format changes that have happened. YouTube has now given everyone a handle.
Yeah.
So
suffer.
So now I now have three names, because when I look at the top, my URL, it still says Sebastian SB on my URL, at least sometimes. But my display name is Keith Ballard, but my handle is Keith Ballard A, and that's once again just because that's just what my email is, and it just became that, and I didn't like change it, and Keith Ballard's taken, so I guess it's just gonna be that, because that's just my middle initial.
Yeah.
That's just what my email address is. So I guess that's
it
my
was-
handle now. It's
I thought your
dumb.
middle initial was J for Jared.
How dare you? How dare you?
Stupid.
It's such a
Stupid
funny
joke.
moment.
So we'll be holding auditions for a new cast member next week, and
Oh, no.
Yeah, auditions for a new colonel. He's getting recast.
yeah. Also, the real one's getting demoted so the new one can take his rank.
I'm looking
He
forward
has to
to
change all
meeting
of his
Colonel
branding.
JRPG.
No,
Yeah, we need
my hell. No, I'm upset by this hypothetical person.
They haven't even arrived, and you're
I
already upset
know.
at them.
Well, they've self-selected into being upsetting.
It wasn't
Wow.
self-selected. It was you guys
If they're
selected
gonna
it.
be, if I assume that the JRPG came from their personality, I assume that's their
Oh.
fault, and I'm not
that's
happy
fair.
about that.
I can see that. I can see the.
They've played every Atelier game and they think they're good.
Oh, I know exactly the person.
This person can
Ma-
tell you the names of every character in Manichemia, a game definitely people have played that wasn't a tax write-off or fraud scheme.
I don't understand the
This is a
jokes
joke 3 people
anymore.
will
I feel like
understand.
the Colonel JRPG was in the house the whole time. It was just Toaster.
I've
How do
been
we
traumatized by friends who like these weird budget games that they're like, oh no, like I've gone through my life hanging out with anime fans and like gaming fans, especially when I was in high school, who were like, I think I found it. I found the secret, best, obscure game that no one's ever heard of that I'm right for loving. It's called, and they'd be like, it's called Rhapsody, a musical adventure. And then I would be like, all right, let's check this out then. And I would play it, and it would be like the worst game I've ever played. That is just so obtuse with like 47,000 like just grindy for the sake of grindy systems on it with the worst voice
Sounds
acting in
about
the
right.
world. And like, and then they'd be
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is just like the peak of the genre. Like, why don't we get more of these in America? And I just like look at them and I'm like, the reason why we don't get more of these in America is because this game was probably some sort of tax scam. And 5 people in the world have played it, including you.
I really,
Yeah.
I really hit my breaking
That's
point with JRPGs during the 360 era, where like, for some
Where
reason,
famously JRPGs were really bad.
yeah, but they kept making. There was a lot of them, and specifically, they all wanted to be like original character do not steal or JRPGs. And so every single one of them had like a hyper complicated, over involved like leveling system that required like a lot of reading to figure out even what you were looking at, just to in the end have zero mechanical depth to it whatsoever. Like kind of akin to like the Final Fantasy 13. Like it kind of looks like it might be doing something like the sphere grid, but really you just hold the level up button for a while, and sometimes you have a slight optional node along the way. But they have to explain it for 20 minutes for some reason, like they invented leveling from scratch and you've never heard of it before because they made a weird fucked up overproduced interface for it. And worst of all, like they had like the most incredibly over-explained, over-tutorialized, nightmarishly complicated battle systems. And when you got through the tutorial, the end result would be, oh, it's a button masher. You just hit attack a lot mostly, and like I guess there's like some elements happening sometimes, or bonus from behind. I specifically remember getting Star Ocean: The Last Hope because when I was a college student and I newly had income, and I was like, I can buy my own things, and I should optimize like for time, right? Like I should try to get like the most time per game, which is a bad way to try to approach buying games. But I was like, JRPGs are long, and all these used ones are like $20, so I get like a bunch of like 40 to 80 hour games for only like $20 each. So like I picked up like Tales of Vesperia and Star Ocean: The Last Hope and The Last Remnant and The Lost Odyssey and stuff like that. And Odyssey was definitely the best one. Last Remnant was baffling. But fucking Star Ocean: The Last Hope, before you even start the game, it puts you into a combat tutorial in an arena where you just play like it's like the equivalent of starting doing the character guides of a fighting game, where you just sits there and just keeps starting over and doing another prompt and another explanation of another mechanic over and over again. And in Star Ocean's case, you went down a vertical list of tutorials and they were longer than the screen and had to scroll. So I did an entire hour of these. And then the moment I actually got into the game a little bit, it was just an action RPG. You hit them a bunch. Like it was Kingdom Hearts or whatever. Like you just go thwack on people, and that's all there really is to it for the most part. So the fact that they thought they needed to front load the game before you had any narrative or mechanical hook with an entire hour of tutorials is insane.
Yeah, that game is famously very bad and almost killed the studio that made it for good reason. That shit is
honestly,
terrible.
if you're making choices that bad, maybe you shouldn't be making games. Maybe everyone needs to scatter to the winds and be rescued by other studios. What an upsetting, weird. And then the second wave of this is that I would occasionally get caught up in the hype wave of a particular JRPG here and there, and be like, maybe I'll cover that for the channel. Innocent as I was, and then I'd always be burned every single time by every new JRPG in like the PS4 era, where every single time I did try one, it was always just kind of a slog, like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, just an irredeemable game.
It's the self-selection of.
But then every time this happened, people would be like, oh, I get it. I understand your taste. I can see the pattern between the things you liked and the things you didn't like. What you really need to play is this game. And then that game would suck too. So like I've taken suggestions like 3 times now on top of being burned. And that's all been more stove hot. Do not touch stove. So I'm just like, I don't want to keep doing this. Like I don't want to keep trying new JRPGs that people totally swear this is the good one because I've been burned 100% of the time. And the fucking, it's such an investment when you start one with the goal of finishing what you start, that it's like, cool, if I don't like this, I'm going to be here for a long time, and you're all going to stop watching anyway, but I want to finish things I start, so it's like, it's just a lot easier never to play a JRPG ever again.
Yeah, modern JRPGs are kind of a mess, and that industry, that particular subset of design, especially games coming out of Japan, are just kind of lost without a paddle at the moment. There are good modern JRPGs. A lot of them are retro throwbacks,
they're all
which is
inspired
interesting.
by Earthbound.
Yes, there's a lot of ones that are good Earthbound like stuff like that.
I still haven't even played Earthbound, but I know that basically every turn-based RPG that I end up liking is actually inspired by Earthbound.
You should fucking play Earthbound, dude.
I probably should. There's infinite things to get caught up on, and I wasted my time playing what people recommended. Patreon's never chosen Earthbound.
Fallout New Vegas wasn't that bad.
Fallout New Vegas isn't bad. It's just very long, and it's not mechanically interesting at all.
Fallout
New Vegas needs. I wish it was a good video game to play for most of the runtime, because like the primary loops that make up the Fallout 3D Bethesda experience are bad. They're exploring these places and picking up trash and fighting the exact same way for 40 hours. And I made the mistake of thinking that the most beloved RPG of all time would have come up with like interesting mechanics for each of its types of playstyles. But no, being a melee character really is just holding down the heavy attack over and over again and one-shotting people, and there's no other buttons basically, and that's your whole playthrough. Real well with
stealth though,
and you can find your best weapon like in a couple hours into playing the game, and then never change weapons again. Yeah, and like there should be more there. there should be more video game there. Honestly, they should
spend their time doing that.
I know that the background is that this game came out. Like it's a miracle it even got finished and it came out so fast and cheap and all that, and I know the background of Fallout New Vegas and that it's like its whole reputation in part comes from like it's so shocking that like one of our favorite things ever came out in the most unlikely scenario and whatnot, but it's still like it's extremely noticeable that it's a very rushed game in several aspects, and that's one of them where you're just like they forgot to give me gameplay. I have a whole play style where I don't ever do anything.
There's a lot of meme to the fact that it's the favorite game of a lot of people these days. I'm not sure where it started, but certainly not after.
There's definitely something said about like a weird internet groupthink thing where certain specific video games you just hear enough that like it's like the equivalent of like hearing about Citizen Kane without watching Citizen Kane. Like you just keep hearing about how it's the best thing ever, and then everyone starts repeating that thought like as a
Yeah.
and meme is the right word for it too, like in the original sense of the word, like not
that's what I mean. Yeah,
not like wacky jokes, but like this weird like viral thought that continues, like meme the way that Kojima used it in Metal Gear Solid 2 is like an explanation of why like specifically people like and it's not to say that they're bad, but the way that people like incredibly heavily fixate on the likes of like New Vegas and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines and a few other games that have been specifically Final Fantasy 7 and a few games that have very specifically just like was it Dark Souls 1 and only Dark Souls 1 and Ocarina of Time. Like there's specific games that are inescapably the best games ever forever, and we don't entirely know how it happened, and there's a lot of competitors that can chip away at elements of that context, and also those games are like they're discussed in a way where their flaws almost are like erased from public discourse 100%. In a strange way.
Oh, yeah. But I think that's better. Like, just to tie it back to the JRPG thing, because I wanted to say something about that. I think that's better. That's a better genre, a better fan base. Well, it's not better fan base because that sounds like really shitty of me to say. But I'm saying it's better for the fan base to have something like that, sort of like a beacon that maybe a lot of people haven't even played or just saw some stuff on YouTube and know the principles of why some people like it. It's better than what at least traditional JRPGs are,
Earthbound,
which is like
Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door.
Yeah, because the
that
whole
game isn't even a
is
traditional JRPG, though.
I know, but
the Paper Mario isn't. It is. Well, not super traditional, but in the sense that like it features so many of the tropes of gameplay specifically, but also quest structure and world exploration,
party gathering, and semi-linear exploration encouraged, but not that intensive turn-based combat game.
Yeah, and everybody
it just has its own quirky leveling systems and so on that make it recognizable in some ways. But then when you look slightly deeper, you're like, wait, no, this just is a JRPG, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's the whole fan base self-filtered into liking. And I mean, they legitimately like those games, but it's such a like detached from the rest of the industry. Well, I mean, a couple of months ago there was some talk about what even JRPG means and how it might be used derogatorily towards Japanese developers. I don't think, as somebody who doesn't play many JRPGs, I don't think a game like, for example, the new Final Fantasies can be considered a JRPG if we're going to talk about a genre. Because if we're just going to talk about, they are RPGs from Japan, then the word doesn't really have
this was the point of my JRPG absurdism over the last few years, where I'm just like, if we're going to keep calling Final Fantasy a JRPG, that means that Monster Hunter, Dark Souls, and Yakuza, especially Yakuza, is a JRPG.
Yeah, especially
so this is a conversation about taxonomy and about the importance of terminology and the importance of people actually knowing the definitions of certain things that they talk about, which they don't. And this has to do with false cognates.
Yeah.
So, for example, people see the term. I'm going to talk about this. The people see the term JRPG.
It's just that false cognate sounds like an entity in the Matrix.
No, a false cognate is a word that sounds one way and looks like it means something, but actually means something else.
Walking simulator.
Artificial intelligence.
Dark is. People kept saying like Death Stranding is a walking simulator. I'm like, that's not. I understand that's what the words technically say, but that's not how that term has ever been used. You can't call Pathologic and Death Stranding walking simulators just because they feature walking.
It is how the term. That's the thing. That's why it's muddy. Sorry, Tilser, I don't want to cut you off for too long.
Yes,
but it has people do use walking simulator like that though. That's what makes it muddy.
Yes. But so the issue is linguistic drift there, taxonomical drift, and so JRPG is a really good example of this. JRPG stands for Japanese RPG. Out of context, completely divorced from its setting and historiography, you would see this term and think, okay, I know what an RPG is. Japanese RPG must just be an RPG that comes from Japan. But that is not what the term JRPG means. JRPG refers to a specific ethos and ideology of design that occurred going from the late 80s to maybe the mid 2000s before things started to diverge. Yeah, that originated in Japan, that evolved from games like Wizardry that were classified as dungeon crawlers and CRPGs, and became games like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, where they fit a taxonomical bracket that has more in common with each other than other RPGs. So, when people say this is a JRPG, or at least when they used to, they did not mean this is just an RPG that happens to come from Japan. They mean this is a game that has a lot in common with traditional Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and, other turn-based Japanese, like Earthbound would be a JRPG that's got twists on the genre, like things like that. So that's also why, and this is something people don't seem to understand and they never seem to think about when I bring this up to them. I'm like, let's talk about Sea of Stars. And they're like, oh, that's a JRPG. And I'm like, yeah, made by a company in the West. So it's not an RPG from Japan, but it is a JRPG, which means
people are approaching it like it's
speaking.
Scotch.
Exactly. It's like taxonomically speaking, being from Japan is not actually a marker for what makes something a JRPG, because there are games that taxonomically are JRPGs that do not come from Japan. Ergo, you can just kind of write this out mathematically. Being from Japan is not what defines something as a JRPG, right? And you see this happen with gaming a lot because people are really divorced from the historiography and the context of older games. They'll be like, oh, like this is an RPG because RPG, you're playing a role. And it's like, that's not what those things meant when we were talking about them like academically or like industry wise or contextually. But because people don't play old games and because they don't know the context of where these things come from, the terms begin to drift. And that's like actually a huge problem with video gaming discourse, is because people don't realize that like things do evolve and change, and that like just because it's called Final Fantasy doesn't make it a JRPG. Like the newest Final Fantasy is basically just a character action game. It's just Devil May Cry. That's all it is. It's Devil May Cry with a leveling mechanic tacked onto it. But you customize your moveset and you use special mechanics. It's a crappy ARPG. Like that's what it is. It's a pretty cool game. It's an interesting game. No one's saying that it's not, but it isn't a JRPG. It's an ARPG at the very least.
I think the evolution of the word or the term and the genre RPG is very muddy, and the vast majority of people forget it, or actually, probably the vast majority of people don't even know it like detailed, because the term as applied to computer games didn't actually start out meaning any sort of choices and consequences like happen in tabletop. It's just the first few RPGs were just the translation of the mechanical aspect of tabletop role-playing games into computer, which is why you get the roguelikes or rogue. You get rogue, but you actually a Calabeth, I think, before rogue, or I forget the other title. But there's a couple of games before rogue. But you get games like that where you literally just build a character and go into a dungeon and dungeon crawl, which is what a roguelike is like. And in fact, JRPGs are very much based on that sort of ethos, and that's why there's not very often choices and consequences in JRPGs, because it's just not what they're there for. The mechanical engagement of the player with the game, or the enjoyment, I should say, the mechanical enjoyment of the player is like, it's sort of abstract to the themes of the game, and that's why things like the RPG Maker even survive or make any sense to a huge part of the fan base. For me, it never made any sense as a creative person. When I think of making a game myself, I'm not gonna mod another game, which is effectively what RPG Maker is. I'm gonna I'm gonna think up character systems and gameplay mechanics and camera movement and AI, and there's a bunch of other things that go into making games. That RPG Maker is a lot better these days than it used to be when
that's how you get Lisa.
But it's still like when it came out, it was very limited, and it still made a lot of popular games. People made stuff with RPG Maker that was enjoyable and fit in the genre.
I think.
Yeah, Yume Nikki was made. Basically, every Earthbound inspired fan game is RPG Maker. Like
it happens because of people just are looking for more more themes, different themes perhaps, or more stories using this set of mechanics. And that's why the other day there was somebody in Keith's comment section talking about, I think it was actually in response to our previous podcast, talking about better games than Skyrim, and their requirements were very specifically tied to the mechanics of Skyrim, an open world first person dungeon crawler. And when you put it like that, there are other games like that, although the first person
it
does
takes you
limit
to
it
stuff
quite a lot.
like Forgotten City, where you're like, the more you play Forgotten City, the more it's just very weird that this system is forced to play like Skyrim because it was originally a Skyrim mod, when it benefits almost in no ways from playing like Skyrim.
Yeah. But the thing is, there's a certain mentality for a lot of people where they like this game and they feel comfortable playing this game, and what they look for isn't, or rather, I'm not going to say what it isn't. I'm going to say what it is. What they look for in other games are similarities in mechanics, and that's why shooters are so popular, or were so popular anyway, for in the 2000s and early 2010s. Is because the mechanics are right there. So if you want a new shooter, you look at the graphics. I like the graphics. Let's go. I know what I'm expecting, right? And these days it's a little bit different. Also, gaming is a completely different scene in the mainstream now. So it's not like this conversation isn't even relevant for mainstream anymore.
95% of people,
yeah. But for us distinguished gamers that listen and have our own podcasts about games, we tend to think of ourselves as people with preferences more on the mechanical side than on the story side of things. And that's why JRPGs are the way they are, because people just have the preference of, I want auto combat because the combat is so shallow. That's such a weird thing to me.
One of the most damning things you can I can hear about these games is that they have remakes where they have a fast forward button, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to play that game then. I don't like that
wild
sound.
to me.
I mean, it's fine. It's okay for like, if you like that, it's fine. I can understand that.
Even stuff like Final Fantasy 12, where you're like, that was relatively late. That's not that old, and it still needed a fast forward button because its pacing is so fucked up. I'm like, oh no.
I mean, a big thing with this too is just that people's focus and like interest in things just has decreased. And so what I mean by this is, people complain about Final Fantasy IX's combat taking a really long time, which is interesting to me because battles in that game last maybe like a minute or two.
Wow.
And you're playing through this game and you hit a random encounter, right? And you have like maybe 30, 45 seconds, kill an enemy in 2 or 3 hits, whatever, cast fire on them. This is a resource check. It's a skill. It's there to provide attrition and create a situation. It's got beautiful, beautiful 3D art for the time, amazing music. But people nowadays get into that random encounter, they sit there for a minute and they're like, oh, it takes so long. I'm losing my life to these encounters. Why don't I have a fast forward button? And I'm like, motherfucker, you can't just like, are you seriously, even over the course of the game, playing hundreds of encounters, cool, that's like an hour and a half. You spent an hour and a half of the game playing the game. Is there a problem? Is there really that much of a problem with that?
I've got 2 minutes. Make it.
I have other games to play, or
so
maybe.
There definitely are games out there that I think, for example, Final Fantasy 12. You can read the use of a fast forward button as a, oh no, combat is too slow and like too brainless. You speed it up to make it less tedious. But Final Fantasy XII's actual mechanical design is about creating order sets for your characters and seeing them play out and testing things. So what you actually use that fast forward for is like, all right, I am testing out to see how this loadout works. Oh, I'm seeing a problem. Now I'm going to pause combat and change how my orders work and stuff. But the way that most people play it, because they don't interface with the game, is they make the main character attack and then put fast forward on ×4, and it turns what would be a 30-minute encounter because they're not playing the game right into a 5-minute encounter. because they're fast forwarding through playing the game poorly, which is like, that's kind of, it's a weird way of framing these games that I think just speaks to why
that's fair.
players are bad at them more so than like, oh no, the point is to skip the game. That being said, most JRPGs have really bad combat, and they're criminally afraid of putting obstacles in front of players.
Which means
just
no one
speaks
will
to-
learn the game in the process of playing
exactly.
it. Which raises the question of
Exactly.
why you would learn the game on some level.
Satisfaction.
If those
completely.
skills
It's just
aren't
a
applicable
Skinner's
anywhere.
box.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah, I definitely agree. If
Like
a game
the
doesn't
idea
force
that
me to learn
the idea
it, I
that
won't
the
learn it.
real game happens when you beat a JRPG and then you go to the optional dungeon and it's like, what?
Yeah.
I beat the
that's-
game. The story is over. I don't
It's
care.
such a pain in the ass. I hate that. I hate it when games do that. That's actually one of my biggest problems with Super Mario Odyssey, is that Super Mario Odyssey has one of the greatest movesets in any video game ever, and it has some of the best movement in any 3D platformer. And the game never once needs you to touch that until you're doing the reverse moons or whatever they're called, the like dark side moons or
Yeah.
like the post game is the only part where the game goes, hey, we have mechanics. You should play with them. And then even then, it isn't until like half of the way through the mechanics or through the post game that it actually starts putting things in front of you. And this isn't a games need to be hard to be good thing, but it is a audiences are unwilling to put any effort into things. And as a result, games are worse because they refuse to play with their own systems, which is just a shame. It's sad.
Did you like it when Celeste did the same thing, or am I misunderstanding and Celeste didn't do the same thing?
I mean, I think Celeste makes you need to have mechanical competency and understand how to play the game way
but you don't
sooner.
you don't need to beat the game. You don't need to understand even like I forget the name of the dash jump thing. But
I
like,
think Celeste puts a lot more on the player throughout its main campaign.
I mean,
Celeste
I've never
expects a
played-
lot of you. It just never requires you to have learned the weird tech that it never
The weird
taught
tech.
you.
Yeah.
Until the
Yeah, but
DLC, where
on the
apparently they
B-sides-
literally teach you that tech and require it.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
B-sides, you need to have. Well, actually, if you're a super good player, apparently you don't, because I've seen a video about it. But it's in general, it's understood that you would want to know that tech on
Yeah.
B-sides and C-sides.
So I guess my thing here is that, like, yes, I like that Celeste does stuff like this, but the point here isn't games should be harder earlier on. It's that games are critically bad at teaching people how to play optimally or teaching them how to use the tools that they've been given. And their solution, especially in modern times, has been to make the difficulty curve of a compulsory part of a video game like basically a very linear, very low grade slope. Like it's like a 2% slope, completely linear, until the end, when it suddenly goes, optional content is here, and spikes the difficulty for that optional content, which I think is really weird because it means, one, the only people that get to experience the game at its fullest potential are people who self-select in, and two, the people who self-select in either have to already have on their own explored those optional things completely bereft from the game itself, or suddenly have to learn in the hellfire moment of trying to go through this optional stuff and bounce off it 100 times until they get it, which is also really bad for encouraging people to try to play those sections, which is why when you look at like achievements for games, especially for games like Celeste, it's like 0.25% of people have all the B-sides in Celeste or whatever. Or like, I don't know the actual numbers there, but like that's why people don't do the optional content in games. They're like, oh, that's optional, I won't touch it, that's like too hard, you have to be a god gamer to do that. And it's like,
That's the reason why I didn't do it.
the game just needs to teach you better, like you just need to
I'm not good enough.
you need to get there. You totally could
jittery.
be.
Nah,
game's very
you can always
hard.
get there. You
I
can
get
always
jittery
but-
with control, like with the
Sure.
firm
yeah,
hands.
Yeah,
in,
I'm better firm hands
breathe
on the
out.
wheel, on steering wheel, rather than necessarily the
Sure.
controller.
And of course,
Right.
there are going to be challenges that some people can't do that like are better suited for other players. Like variance always exists. My point is games should be better at onboarding people into being good at the games.
I think
because
the
no one is born good at every game. It should be you should be teaching people how to take advantage of your systems so that they engage with them and they have a good time with them and it's interesting, rather than making your game oatmeal, like plain oatmeal flavored, so
Do you
that
know
the
why-
most people buy it.
You know why that is though? Is like it ties into you saying that JRPGs are deathly afraid of putting obstacles in player's path. A game, like the easiest solution for a game that has boring combat, or say current, I'm sorry, boring gameplay. The easiest solution for a game that has boring gameplay is to never force the player to repeat the gameplay they did before, and that way
exactly.
they can sort of spoon feed story progress or experience bars or whatever items. There's a lot of mechanics for that, but the reward is just part of the reason. When I die in Baldur's Gate 3 and in Divinity Original Sin 2 and there's a bunch of games like that, well, in games that are meant to be to where you die and can try again. But when I die in Baldur's Gate 3, I look forward to trying again. I'm not, that fight I was almost done. No, it's good. I'm going to play more. It's lovely, amazing. I love it. And if I can't, it's like a strategical decision where I'm like, okay, I can't do this. Let's come back with a different build or level up a little or get better items, whatever. And that's fun because the gameplay itself is fun. If it isn't fun, then all of that is wasted. And I have played games like that where you die at the end. It's like, oh no, I can't believe I'm going to have to do all that again. And that's because the gameplay isn't fun. To me specifically, it isn't fun. It doesn't mean that it's not to everybody, but
I've said it for years that like if your game is bad, the best thing you can do is make it easy.
Yeah.
Because then people will just frictionlessly just burst through it and they won't have to realize how nightmarishly bad it is. It's like akin to like how Yik had that one comically broken record throw move on the main character that let you one-shot most encounters for the entire game.
Oof.
And so you never had to engage with how truly awful Yik's combat actually is, because that one button single-handedly busted the entire thing. Stephanie and I were playing, and the fucking combat update happened in our last episode. So we lost our skip combat attack and had to actually play the combat, and it's one of the worst things that's ever happened to me.
I remember it was terrible. Yes.
And like there's an Anima Chain of Memories or Gate of Memories or whatever was like a game that like just was viciously brutal, and that it had these massive bullet sponge enemies, and it was relatively punishing, but it was just the worst combat I've ever seen. And like again and again, I always think like, yeah, if you just failed to make coherent systems, the easiest solution is just to make them easy, and then people will just burst through it all, and they don't have to sit here and live in this the way that I am in some of these games.
Yeah.
Yik was
The problem is that easy is just seen as a default, and that's just frustrating. I was disappointed.
Do you think easy is seen as a default though? Do you think that's true?
I think making games easy is the default.
Oh, I see.
I'm not saying picking easy is the default. People often want to pick normal or hard or something. I was very disappointed because we were playing Remnant 2, and I'm like, okay, well, we're playing a 3-player co-op looter shooter game where you can pick people up and revive them. So like playing with a third person exponentially increases how easy the game is, most likely. I'll pick hard mode. That'll balance that out, right? Turns out hard mode is like crushingly impossible because it's not normal video game hard mode, it's Diablo hard mode. It's like starting on Nightmare in a game where your power level affects the difficulty. And so it's like, this is a...
Oh, no.
So it's seemingly a new game plus mode, but it's not explained that way. So like, it was literally impossible. I'm sure it's not literally impossible, but it was like so crushingly difficult. And then we tried normal mode, and it's so comically easy. Like there's just no middle ground. Like I just want the game to like have some level of me paying attention, being rewarded, and like some effort in our group collectively, but not like us. We've been playing. This is the first boss fight in the entire game, and we've been fighting for an hour. Like, there should be something between those if you have difficulty selects. But no, apparently not.
I think the middle ground might not always be the solution, because Oblivion specifically has a middle ground. So the
I mean, every Elder Scrolls game has terrible difficulty sliders.
yes, because
Yeah.
the slider
Just
of an Elder
numbers
Scrolls
going up.
game, it's numbers, and in
Yeah.
specific Oblivion, if I remember correctly, the vanilla one, it scales. So if you max out the difficulty, it scales enemies to like 10 times the health and do 10 times damage
Yeah.
or something absurd like that.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a kid when the game came out. I was 18 or something, but still, I remember because it's been a while. Hi, it's been 94 years, and I remember when I realized, like, maybe 30 hours into the game, because I was restarting the game at a certain point. It took me forever to. I only recently finished Oblivion, by the way, because I never finished it at the time. I played it for like 200 hours and never finished it. Which I suppose is a normal experience. But it took me like 30 hours to realize that if I cranked the difficulty slider to the maximum at the start of the game wasn't unplayable, but it's just the enemies you were fighting the same mud crab for like a solid 2 or 3 minutes because it just took forever. It was absurd, depending on your build, obviously, because it depends on
the
how.
slider made no sense in that game at all.
Yeah, and it was like, wait, so if maxing it out doesn't make the game good, am I supposed to find and decide what is good for me? And I never did. I set it to normal, and I just play from then on. I play all Elder Scrolls games on normal, and I do not think about it. Mostly because the gameplay isn't also very engaging. So it's not like a Dark Souls gameplay where it matters.
No, but most Bethesda games are very frictionless, like milquetoast gray experiences, and there's also nowhere to go with it. Like, they're so mechanically shallow that increasing the difficulty doesn't give you anything to play with. Like, there's not a lot of, like, it's not Dark Souls. You're not like, here's my dodge roll and here's my block and here's like my series of like really concrete movement tools and so on to interact with melee combat. Interestingly, it's very much like a weird slap fight with the most weightless swords ever and so on. Like, it's never felt good. But no, I remember because I played Oblivion back when it was out, and specifically I hit the tournament arc at the arena.
Oh yeah.
And suddenly I was forced to engage with the combat of Oblivion without any exploration or narrative context. It was just fight a guy over and over again. And I was immediately so bored. That's when I went in and discovered the difficulty setting. And I was like, okay, let's see if I can make the game fun. Is it hiding here? And a slider is just the most baffling difficulty select ever, as if you need 100 difficulties in a game. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, what does that mean? And there's no difficulty isn't even linear as a concept. Like, people, when they make difficulty settings in a game, they'll have individual difficulty settings that emphasize specific elements of the game for what you're heightening. Like, if you want to make it more of a survival game, or if you want to make it like combat more punishing, or like different things that you want to like highlight, like kind of like how like fucking Devil May Cry is like, here's you die in one hit mode. that's not linear difficulty escalation. But like Oblivion is just like, here's a slider. What does the slider mean? What do the parts of it mean? I don't know. All I know is I turned up that slider and suddenly I was just stuck in an arena with somebody who seemingly had infinite health, but also couldn't really do much to me. And they were just healing themselves forever. They just kept casting spells. So they were just seemingly unkillable. And I look at this escalation of unkillability and I'm like, what tools do I even have mechanically to interact with that? Like, there's just an unkillable enemy, and I don't think I can in a game that was concretely designed in a way that's like, you're playing this character and you're at this point in this linear sequence of levels, you have these abilities so far, that kind of stuff. That kind of game you could trust to be like, okay, like, yeah, you jump on the Koopas and that makes them fall upside down, and in Thousand Year Door or whatever, like, there's like, you'd expect an interaction to be integrated in the game that would let you deal with what's happening. But it's just Oblivion, a game where you've never thought or done anything interesting ever, and your character doesn't have any interesting tools, and then suddenly the enemy just has infinite power, and you're like, I don't have a counter to that. I don't even know what the game would want me to do. It never taught me. Yeah. This game hasn't, like, like, if there is a trick here, the game has never taught me how to play it. So I'm like, what the fuck is happening? So it's just, the game was just unplayable on higher difficulties. Like, that, it was a whole...
Yeah.
There was no find your
I-
own fun. It was just get burned by the attempt to experience the game differently and then be like, nope, never again.
There are tools to do that though. You could you probably couldn't at the time, but if you reload it, you can paralyze enemies unless they're immune to it, which when they are actually immune. But you can paralyze enemies and prevent them from casting spells, but not from using potions. So it's because they can use potions the moment they get out of paralyze. So if they have potions in their inventory, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not
Well, the thing I'm gonna
greatest thing.
say about that is that just like I think the big thing here too that people talk about when they talk about difficulties are like, well, there are mechanics that you can use to get around it, but then my response to that is like, but the game one isn't designed around those mechanics. Like this encounter was not designed to test your ability on using paralyze or solving the issue, like solving this equation out of the box. The presence of mechanics that can soften bad encounter design does not inherently make that encounter design good. And so like that's my issue with like Bethesda difficulty
100%.
is like you're just putting a slider that pushes the numbers up. Can I do the proper math equation to outnumber those numbers? Sure. But like one, that's not a skill that the game was designed around. Two, it's not tested anywhere else. Three, that's not playing the game. There's no ludo narrative there. That is literally just I did a math equation. I did the math equation that this particular opportunity created for me because I put the slider really high. Like that's such a bummer. Like I get so sad thinking about that. I wish games had a better approach to difficulty. And that's honestly why I kind of don't like difficulty levels, especially in terms of games where it's just like the enemies are harder on a higher difficulty. Like, give me different AI, give me different encounters.
Oh, you want higher coherent difficulties? Well, most developers never made a single coherent difficulty level.
Yeah, a single coherent difficulty.
Like the game doesn't mechanically come together to begin with, so how are you going to have like escalation of that? Besides just breaking the system and making it torturous.
And especially when like that demoralizing feeling when you feel good and comfortable at a game and you're confident and you choose, you crank it up, and it's just it is either so hollow that it's not worth doing, or it's just so ridiculously unbalanced that you're like, well, now I'm just gonna suffer, even though it's not a skill issue. It's just a poor design choice. Like it just
9 times out of 10 it just becomes tedious more so than like challenging.
It's like I can do this, but I really don't want to spend 50 hours in a game that I could just beat normally in like 20. Like why am I going to do that when I'm not going to get satisfied from it? I'm just going to be frustrated like, oh good, great.
I think an easy solution oftentimes is just to add more enemies. Making the difficulty be just add more enemies. It depends on the game, but if it's like a strategy game, or like a Baldur's Gate kind of game, I could see that Baldur's Gate doesn't do it like that. As far as I know, it does a mixture of health pools and damage, and artificial or the AI of the enemies is better at higher difficulties. It's actually amazing. They cast all the right spells and push people around. It's incredible. But the trick of adding more enemies could be I don't know why people don't do it that more often. I think it just might mean that how would a game like because the thing with extra enemies is that a game like Oblivion is so based around aggroing only a couple of enemies at a time when you are up against a challenging group, that adding more enemies just doesn't actually doesn't make the gameplay directly more difficult. It just takes longer because there's more of them to kill.
I think it depends. I don't think having just more enemies is it, but like a good example that I would think of like here in this Baldur's Gate situation is like, okay, on easy mode, let's say like on easy mode, there is a barrel with a bunch of oil next to this encounter that's near a torch.
Oh, yeah,
so right
cool.
on your first turn, you can shoot the torch and knock it into the barrel, and the barrel explodes and kills 3 enemies. Right? Like doing interesting environmental things. Whereas like if on hard mode, by the time you get there, the barrel's filled with water instead of oil, or like something like that. Like it directly affects what tools you have to encounter a scenario, that when added with things like enemies have better AI, or like maybe on hard mode that barrel filled with oil is still there, but the enemy layout is different.
It's different.
So that instead of taking cover behind the barrel that's filled with oil that can explode, an enemy will take cover behind a pillar that's far enough out of range that in order to get the barrel explosion and feel smart and use that tool, you need to strategically get the opponent over there first.
Or
So
the
your
enemy
strategy
throws
can
the
remain the
barrel
same.
at you.
Yes,
They do that.
exactly.
They do that. The
Exactly.
motherfuckers.
Like that can be a really cool way of approaching difficulty, but just so many games don't, because of course, and again, I'm not unsympathetic here. There are absolutely devs that I'm sure would love to do this that just don't fucking have time to do it because game development is hard and it takes a lot of time and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But like the other thing is that like I think it starts with the players. I think part of the issue is that like, again, it's I think people took the wrong lessons from like wanting games to be art and like games being for everyone and stuff. Is it's like when I was younger, there was this really big push in games to be like, well, I like games for the story, and the stories are so deep and you can enjoy them for the story. It's not just about shooting things or killing things. And this
That's
was
why I
true.
play Fable.
Yeah, and this is true, but then
Sorry.
people took the wrong lesson from it, and now I see people who play, you know, JRPGs, and they're like, I love Persona. Persona's so good, and it's such a cool RPG with great story, just the best RPG ever. I play it on easy mode because like I don't want to have to think. I just want the story. I'm playing it for the story. The story's good, and it's like, okay, you can play the game how you want, but like maybe do you realize that you're like kind of doing harm to the thing that you were trying to like talk about being really well designed and artistic and having merit, and you just kind of consumified it? Like you made it into a commodity by trying to argue with people that it was actually more than just a commodity. Like that's the end result, I think, of that, is people not wanting to engage, wanting to enjoy and consume endlessly, kind of killed
I see
it.
what you mean.
You know, like this idea of like, it's for everyone and everyone should be entitled to enjoy the one thing they like about it. But the thing is that when games became massive, they stopped being an engaged experience by and large that you needed to invest time into. And now we're just like immediate consumption commodity. Everyone who wants anything out of this can get it immediately with no engagement. And it like, I feel like it just devalues the experience that people are having. And the sad thing about it is that people don't even realize that it's devaluing it because they truly believe that they're getting everything they can get out of it. And it's like, that's sad. That's very distressing.
That's because it devalues the experience in general and not on an individual basis. It's like I grew up playing GTA 2, just cheat mode all the time. And obviously I only experienced the game in that facet growing up. I had a lot of fun, and my experience was that. But obviously, I didn't have an impact in the market as a whole. But the what you're talking about is market trends being influenced by that sort of attitude. And I think I see where you're coming from. I think, it's tricky.
Yeah,
it's tricky. I think I don't know. There's a lot of marketing as well. Like people, from what I've seen of, have you played Persona, Toaster?
Isn't it just? I mean, at this point,
I've
isn't it just a money
100%ed
issue?
every single Persona game.
and do you agree that the story is really good?
They're fine.
Yeah, that's my impression as well. Like,
okay,
because the marketing comes at it so strong. It's like, oh, these are the best written games ever, and I'm like, no, Outer Wilds is better.
Yeah. Well, Ludo narrative is a big thing, right? And like, I've often found that when games are like, I love the stories of games, I often talk to people who are like that, and then I'm like, you didn't actually understand the narrative of this game, or like what your player narrative was. You liked the idea of the story that was being told to you if you put on blinders to all of the things that you have mechanically taken part in as part of this telling of this story. And so I think that also devalues narratives. And it's the reason. It's funny, people in the comments and stuff have said before, they're like, you know, Toaster isn't like a story minded person, he's like a gameplay first player. And I'm like, y'all are fucking crazy. Like you have completely misread me, because I am a super intellectual, like I like stories and games that do things cool with their stories first beyond anything else. If a game is just gameplay, you have to make a very strong argument for me to find it interesting, because I want games that say things. I just want things to also say things with their mechanics. So like if a game is just story, it's missing 50% of the equation, and if a game is just gameplay, it's missing 50% of the equation. That's not to say that games need to have incredible stories to be worthwhile. You can have really simple stories that are motivated by really simple gameplay, and the execution of those things can be so good that I would give them like a 10 out of 10, you know? Like I think, you know, using Celeste as a great example, Celeste has great gameplay and a great story, even if its story is just very simply told, and like in the end it's not like this moving, you know, heart-swelling cinematic narrative. I think it is moving.
Heart swelling. Oh my god! I think you're up every time.
Sure, I'm not saying
like,
that's
even in
not
the middle,
what it's doing.
My favorite scene.
I find it emotional. What I'm saying is, it's not like and then the music swells and I'm watching a cutscene where a character. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch
the
like it's not
of it. That's the best.
Exactly.
Part.
Exactly. And those things are really meaningful. So when I compare fucking Celeste, which is a relatively simple game with a relatively simple narrative, told very effectively, very subtly, right there, and then I look at Mario, I'm like, why the fuck would I ever play a Mario game? Sure, it's colorful, but once again, we're back to the point of like, I can close my eyes and imagine fireworks, because what else am I going to get out of it? The gameplay might be okay, cool. I can play other games that have great gameplay and great narrative and great Ludo narrative all tied together that are more engaging and more mentally stimulating than like, I'm gonna hop on some Koopas again because Mario's got to get all the dingles to get the stars back in the sky. And then it's like, all right, like I guess
I've learned
this
from the
exists.
Paper Mario games that I don't want a Mario game to try to have a story because they're tedious.
Yeah, well,
like,
I mean, I'm not even talking about
like
story. I'm
if
just saying,
anything,
like,
I just want
say
like
something.
Bowser to show up periodically and just be like, not just like villainous, but like villainous in a way that's slightly surprising and funny. Like just go like have some quirks to it that are very entertaining, and that's like 80% of what I ever enjoy about Mario's like storytelling. Because like, holy shit, like talk about fire hot, do not touch fire. Like I did not like Paper Mario at all. And then people are like, well, that's because you haven't played Thousand Year Door. That's the good one. And then I played Thousand Year Door, and I'm like, this is almost the same game, and it's not very interesting. And now they're just like, oh, now you gotta play Super Mario. That'll be the one that'll finally get you. I'm like, why do you guys like this? I haven't liked two of these games, and they're both long. Why do you think I like the third one? They keep bringing it out. I don't believe them.
Paper Mario's another one of those series that I find really intriguing because when they were coming out, Paper Mario was well received. Thousand Year Door was very well received. Then Super Paper Mario came out and people were like, this series is dead. This is the worst. I can't believe they did this. This is terrible. And then the next one came out and people were like, holy fuck, this is even worse than Super Paper Mario. And then the 3DS ones came out or whatever. And people were like, this is it. I can't believe they're still making these. Every single decision behind these games are terrible. But every single time this happens, people are like, actually, Super Paper Mario was good. Actually, Sticker Star was good. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. No one... People do this with Sonic Unleashed. They're like, Sonic Unleashed was actually good, and I'm like, no, it wasn't. Stop rewriting history.
Yes,
no one
do.
Likes
they
this
say
stuff.
that at us a lot. But yeah, no, judging by the discourse that I'm exposed to from people trying to get me to play it, it definitely seems like Paper Mario fans have completely rehabilitated Super Paper Mario.
This is fascinating, just
because
I remember when it came
out that it's a good one now.
Yeah, I remember when it came out and Paper Mario fans for years, like the entire Wii generation was like, well, the franchise is dead. They killed it. They ruined everything that made it good. It's just like, all right, well, you know, again, and these are games that I'm not particularly invested in. It's just like, it's just very fascinating to see the rewriting of history by people who were not there when it happened. And then like, you know, you see things online and people are like, no, people really loved Super Paper Mario when it came out. And I'm like, bitch, I was there. No, they did not.
Well,
they did not like this game. I was on the forums, motherfuckers. Like, I saw it.
There's definitely a lot of like, as time goes by and your only exposure is to this shit, you go like, yeah, I don't know, Super Paper Mario seems like a really good time. Did you guys play Sticker? Like that shit. And it's like, yeah, I mean, or you could play,
That's part
you
of
know,
the
none of these.
It is also part of the
Like,
appeal
yeah.
of like these like I played this franchise 15 years later type videos where somebody goes in blind and plays
Yeah.
a thing that has pre-existing narratives about what's good and bad about it, and then they're like, well, here's my take when I don't know what the fuck the discourse is, and I'm just like this, and then they have like completely
Yeah.
surprising responses about which games are good and bad in the franchise, because oftentimes, you know, opinions aren't reliable. No one's opinions are. Like we all,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
like the discussion before of like the meme of certain games being good or bad, but also like there's just like this, the way the discourse happens, what state you were in when you hit the game, what you were expecting from it versus what it was, and whether or not that was fair, and so on. Like if you take my initial review of having played Myst as like a 7-year-old on my grandma's computer and having never seen a point and click adventure game or even a first person game before, and having no idea even what how to interact with the thing in front of me, it was very different from the part of me that came back after having played a bunch of puzzle games and had decades of video game experience, and then I popped into Myst and I'm like, oh, this is actually a really straightforward video game. Like Myst,
Yeah.
the idea that Myst is even confusing, like, doesn't even compute if you're just experienced with video games as a concept and like
yeah.
have played a BioShock and been like, oh, you're supposed to look around and acknowledge what your surroundings mean. But like talking about like people like ludonarrative elements, like I always think back to like what in my BioShock playthrough where I'm like looking for things to talk about and so on, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. This is a society where you can pay off the police. That's a baked-in gameplay element, that you can pay money to undo a crime you just did at a vending machine. And like people jumped on me like that was like reading too much into it and so on, or I was like, it's just a video game element or whatever. Like, no, that's explicitly part of like the fucking like Randian commentary they're doing in this game. Is like, this is a society where money turns anything
Rights
that
all
is
wrongs,
illegal
correct.
Yeah.
into something that is legal for a price.
Yeah, GTA just has you wait and,
And
then you lose your wanted level. They could make
Yeah.
it okay,
And the
but
fact
they
that-
don't do that because that's the point. Like
The fact that people weren't
Yeah.
just immediately like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but instead had weird backlash, like I was like making stuff up or reading into things. I'm like, you guys play games
They're
wrong?
Bioshock. They're that
Yeah.
kind of
It's a-
Bioshock fans. The ones that put Bioshock in the non-political list. of games.
That have failed to
Yeah,
register
these-
that Bioshock's
the
about
thickest
commentary
motherfuckers.
and that the things in its environment
Yeah.
exist for a reason narratively. It's very
Yeah.
frustrating because it's like the most, Bioshock's the Black Mirror of commentary in video games, where it does not want you to interpret it, it just wants you to get it. It's
Yeah.
like, here's what I'm saying, fucker. I'm saying it very loud. You can't miss it, and people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Which
part
is
of
why
that too
it's
is
part of why I'm
people
right. I
are-
have a script about Black Mirror right now because I'm like, motherfucker. I went on a walk and let my phone autoplay Black Mirror videos, and this was actually my previous prologue to the script, and then I deleted it and rewrote it because I didn't like it, the tone of it anymore. But it was just me ranting about other people's videos, but in abstract, because I don't actually respond. I don't do reply videos or so on because I hate that whole like part of YouTube. But I was
Yeah.
losing my mind because all these Black Mirror videos, like especially with the newest season, they would just come away from entire episodes like, what was even the point of that? Like, who did it even have a point? Who knows? Does it even need to have a point? And I'm like, what a weird thing to say in general. It's a weird thing to say when, in this case, this was a video about, it was like a look back at the entire history of Black Mirror, and it was this big, like, hour-long breakdown or something of the overall series and its history and how it deals with technology and so on. And then it gets the new stuff. It's like, I don't know, throw my hands up. I can't come up with any meanings for this whatsoever. But I'm like, that'd be weird to say
But
about
one
any
of the
Black.
issues with the newest seasons are that they're so fucking loud about what they're
Yeah,
saying.
but it's also like, it's like not only is that a weird thing to say about any Black Mirror episode, it's a really
Yeah.
weird thing to say about Demon 79, an episode of Black Mirror that just has the Tories in it. Like it just is, here's England with and it's full of like anti-immigration, pro-discrimination movements. It's about white supremacy and the systems that non-white people face in this country. how do you come away from that and think, oh, I guess this episode wasn't really about anything? There was like a weird demon or something. Anyway, Boxfall, everyone dies or something. Like, it was the most... It's like I've been bouncing between two interpretations of how this stuff happens. And like, one is that I think that people are so like technology Coomer brained in Black Mirror that they literally wait for the technology to show up to start thinking, and then they just think about that technology. So like, they're waiting for a hologram to appear, and they're like, oh, that hologram, what does the hologram mean? What does it say about society? And then until that happens, they're just watching, like, they think they're watching the prologue to the episode or something. And so if the episode doesn't have a sci-fi thing pop up, then it literally doesn't have a premise to them. Which is weird, because the first episode was just a modern... Yes. The first episode has zero sci-fi tech.
Yeah, but
the first episode of the entire show has zero sci-fi tech whatsoever. So
you're
it's
talking
just
about
wild.
the pig one?
Yeah.
The pig one, yeah.
Isn't that like universally the most not liked episode?
No, not even close.
That is very...
That episode is one of the best episodes
enjoyed.
of the show.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's just that people that can't think about Black Mirror, that don't understand that Black Mirror is about dystopia, but instead think it's about technology, think that that's a weird, like, fucked up, like, mistake episode or something, because they can't comprehend what it's for. In the same way that when they watch the new season, which has one sci-fi episode and 4 non-sci-fi episodes, they genuinely don't know what to do with it and think that it jumped the shark with the season and don't know what to what to think about any of it. The other interpretation of why it happens is that people are so afraid to talk about racism ever that they just don't. And that leaves them with nothing to talk about when the episode's about racism. So they just were like, I don't know, that was a weird episode. There was like a demon or something. Please don't hate me. Bye. I'm like, cool. Yeah. Why'd you make Black Mirror content, you fucking coward?
Yeah.
Money.
It's really embarrassing to be such a creative coward on YouTube that you can't even be as engaged as Black Mirror is, which isn't that deep. Like, if you can't even acknowledge the on its face themes of an episode, then you're like, well, then why are you talking about it? Why are we doing this?
I think it's interesting too, because there are other Black Mirror episodes from its original run. Like White Bear is like one of the most beloved episodes of Black Mirror. References to it keep coming back in new episodes. Like, it's the one episode of the show they just won't fucking stop referencing.
Which one was that?
That's the one about the person who's like, I'm gonna spoil.
She wakes up and she's being tormented by like this town in the woods, and she doesn't remember who she is or what's happening.
Yeah, and then it turns out that it's like a punishment.
It's an episode about punitive justice.
Yeah,
that's the entire point.
But I mean, to me, that still had its own little technological spin. Like, they had an ability to make people like self-forget about something.
I mean, there is frequently technology. No one's denying that.
Yeah. No, I
but
just
the
mean
point
like
of that episode. The point of that episode isn't, wouldn't it be bad if we had memory erasing technology? It's mob mentality and punitive justice are a terrifying combination. There's there's no technological commentary there. It literally is just about politics.
One of the takeaways I want people to have is the fact that whenever you discuss the actual themes and point of any Black Mirror episode, your phrasing of the societal issue and like what is being interrogated about people and so on, like, you almost always end up with a summary that doesn't mention the technology, no matter how loud it was.
Yep.
Like, when you talk about 15 million merits, when you talk about what's actually saying about people and what actually happened to the characters and what that society does to people, you almost never actually talk about the screens that make up most of the episode. Like, it's the loudest technology episode in the whole show. It's nonstop screens, and
that's fascinating.
It's actually relatively hard to even like shoehorn talking about the screens into discussing most of what the episode's doing, because that's just not actually the point. It's mostly an aesthetic, because mostly the episode is a thematic remake of 1984. And that also was one where like there were some screens, but not that wasn't the point.
Yeah, and 1984 is also a lot about technology.
But also not. It features technology, but it's not about the technology.
It's not about that.
I mean, it's fundamentally about how people are controlled.
Yeah.
And technology is just a vector with which the control is manifested. And that's,
Yeah,
I mean,
the plot
yes, it
device,
is
literally.
saying something. It is saying something about like, oh no, we watched too many advertisements. Like we're getting subliminal messaging from everywhere and overt messaging from everywhere.
Yeah,
But
there's
it's
some
not.
themes there.
It's not saying TV is bad. It's saying we need to interrogate the sources from which we are constantly being motivated to commodify ourselves and our society through this
Yeah.
very capitalistic system that turns us all into value metrics.
And 50 million merits is
Yeah.
really important for two reasons. One, it's the first episode they wrote, so it's like
Yep.
the starting point for the entire
ethos
show.
of the show.
What
Yeah.
happened in the production in the background is they had a third episode that season that the channel didn't like, so it got scrapped, and they very rushedly wrote the pig episode at the end and put it at the beginning. But that was like the rushed, like last minute script that did better than it probably should have under the circumstances. But 15 million merits is the first script that was written for Black Mirror, so it's like it's like the thesis statement going in, but it's also retroactively reinforced as being such because the song from that episode features in every season of the entire show, like as a constant reminder of that being like the where this has all come from and so on. So it's like that's very much like, oh yeah, the song that she sings on that stage has been in every season.
Damn, I like literally, I am definitely one of those like I only care about the technology. I'm only interested in like, yeah, like the politics
Like,
of it is.
Did you
all,
watch
like,
the new
it's
season,
all-
Andrew?
I did, but like I hated it absolutely.
So
Like,
in Joan is awful when Joan walks into that restaurant to meet her ex.
Yeah,
It's playing. That's the song in the background is the same one from 15 Million Merits.
I just completely
It's just-
zoned it out.
It
It's like
happens.
it's
It
one of the
happens.
most like.
It happens so
Oh
much.
my god. I guess in my head it's because when I know what the politic is, I already have the opinion viewed. I already know in my head like what is the like approach
What
that
the
I should be
takeaway
having.
is.
Yeah, like I already
Yeah.
go like, oh yeah, I get the moral lesson here. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
bad. And then I just like throw it. It's all in the trash now. I don't care. I already have that opinion. So I focus heavily on like what is the systems that people are suffering under in this world. Like what is
Yeah.
the thing that makes these people upset? And I think uniquely the new Black Mirror season, I think the only reason I really hated it was because it had an episode about the streaming platform that it's on, and I just got done watching the new Futurama, which has an episode about the streaming platform it was on, and I was like, dude, I'm tired of this shit. Stop talking about your stupid fucking publisher. I don't fucking care. Like, I get
Yeah.
it. Oh, yeah, Hulu is bad. Yeah, Netflix is bad. Stop watching content. Like, fuck off, man. I don't want to hear this shit anymore. Like it was such a sour note to start on, and I think that's what like tainted my entire experience.
It's very funny.
And it is just like it just was such circumstantial, but the fact that it is happening is enough to be like, okay, I get the idea of meta self-referential humor or whatever, but nothing is less funny than what is obviously just corporate pandering. Like,
Yeah.
it's very much just a like, yeah, remember that thing you're on? It's so bad, rolling my eyes. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, dude. You're here. Like, get the hell out of here. Like,
I do think
I don't know.
you just brought up something that's really interesting though, Andrew, and that's you basically said, you know, I go into these episodes and if I understand their politics, I come away from the story like I already was there. Right? Like you're already at that point. And I think that
Yeah.
that's interesting because I do think that Black Mirror suffers from an issue, which is that it is often written for people that share its perspective. Which is to say, at the end of 15 million merits, I do not think anyone is changing their mind and coming over to the good side about why commodification
Yeah.
and you know, like the value of you know, I don't think that anyone it's not a revelation. And I think that a lot of the newer episodes, the social credit episode sticks out in my mind as one that like really bugs me because it's like these social credit systems are really bad and they enforce the systems that that basically make it a downward spiral and like you can't escape it and it's another form of commodification and oppression. Every single fucking person who watched that episode of Black Mirror understood that at moment one before the social credit system was introduced. And so its
Yeah.
takeaway is devalued by the fact that it is being written for an audience that is already there. Now, do I think that that means there is no merit in writing a story about how social credit is bad? No. But I do think that it suffers from a particular problem where, and it's not even an echo chamber thing, it's just there oftentimes is very little to get because the surface level reading is just the correct one, and everyone is able to see it because they knew it already. You know what I mean?
You'll be shocked by how often people fail the surface level reading.
Which is that
for
impressive.
sure.
Like that.
I do think
baffles
that's
me.
true. I do think that's true. I
Listening
think
to
that
Black
there are people
Mirror
that don't get
takes
it.
stressed me out.
Black
Yeah.
Mirror
Like,
just
one of
feels
the
like
wor-
a show
one of the
that literally
worst-
can't hide. Like it cannot
Yeah.
like be subtle about anything it's doing. Like you
No.
look at shit. Like yeah, again, 100 million credits is like the most obvious. Like yeah, this would suck. I would literally kill myself in this society. And then the takeaway is like, yeah, wouldn't you kill yourself in this? Yeah, I would. Like, wouldn't you do that too? What the fuck? Who's asking this question? Like,
I think it's interesting as well looking at Black Mirror. One of the episodes I stick on, because I've been watching Black Mirror since it first started, and I was watching it when it was airing and stuff. And I remember
Yep.
looking forward to White Christmas, the special episode with John Hamm. And that was like an episode that like everyone was really looking forward to. And when it came out, it got these like crazy good reviews. But I actually think of that episode as the episode where the show begins to lose its identity and like really start to fall off the rails. I think that episode is actively bad because it also suffers from the same issue of basically just being the question it poses without saying anything meaningful about it. It literally is just, it would be bad if you blocked people in real life. And then that's all it's saying. And it's like, yeah, it would be. I guess muting people is a very punitive problem. AI and AI assistants and commodifying people and then blocking them and having full control over them is maybe bad.
Yeah, episodes break down when they're when they're like not even applicable in some cases. Like
Yes, exactly.
I continually can't figure out the point of Playtest.
Same. Playtest is the other episode I really hate, where people are like, I love it so much.
Playtest is constantly praised. It's constantly ranked as one of the best episodes of the show. It's constantly ranked higher than 50 million merits, which frustrates me because Playtest is about a guy who goes in to test a cool VR horror game and dies instantly.
He dies because he doesn't text his mom or
and before
something.
you realize that he died, there's like a 40-minute horror sequence that plays that is apparently just his synapses of his dying brain or something, and isn't applicable narratively in any way to any larger world concept. It's not. There's no morality tale that beyond like the comical idea of text your mom or something. Like it's a non sequitur. It's not related to anything that happened. That episode's interesting in that on a structural level, it's got a bunch of entertaining quirks of like throughout the entire episode before he goes in the simulation, there are constant Easter eggs and references to things that will happen in the simulation. So it's like a justification for what his brain does when he's dying. And so like as a little horror thing, it's got creativity in it, but it has no point whatsoever as far as I can tell. It's just the moral is don't test potentially lethal technology.
Text your mom. Text your mom because you might not be able to.
Because the thing was that he wasn't supposed to have his phone in the place.
Yeah, but that's not applicable to like, life in any way.
No, it's like the moral
don't
lesson
forget
is
to
like,
turn your phone off. Remember airplane mode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a thing there too that's weird is that like I've seen people write about Playtest specifically, and they're like, it's about the exploitation of workers and laborers and the horrors of the video game industry. And I would be like, yes, that is true. Those are things that happened in real life, except the show doesn't construct that narrative.
Yeah.
None of that has anything to do with what's happening to him.
None of that's actually in the metaphor.
The lack of governmental oversight on part of chip makers and things like that had anything to do with what this episode was saying, because ultimately the guy is running away from his problems, goes to do an escapism thing, and then is instantly killed by a completely unrelated thing because coincidence happened. Which is like, okay,
he literally dies in
had a story.
The premise of the entire episode is that he dies in a freak accident.
Yeah.
And it's
it's
not an episode about dying in a freak accident. Like it's not like looking for Alaska or something. Like it's just
Is it? I
it's
thought he
just
died because of his own actions.
not really.
I mean, it is
not in a plot, not in a way that's tangible, as in like, and this is what's
I thought it
wrong
was
with
literally-
human beings is they're always doomed to
Oh.
self-destruct, like an annihilation or something.
I
It's
thought it
like-
was because he literally brought the phone in when he wasn't
It
supposed
is.
Yes,
to.
it
And
is,
then
but
is-
that's
killed
not.
him.
There's nothing to
But that
that. Is
doesn't
what we're
mean
saying.
anything.
That doesn't mean
Just
anything.
humans don't follow directions. They're dumb. They're like
but you
stupid
shouldn't
Sure.
die for
creatures.
bringing your phone in when you're not.
Sure.
Yeah, you
no,
should, because the rule says don't do it because it could kill you.
No, fuck the
It is
rules.
sure.
Oh, he says they can kill. Okay.
But what is
Yes.
that saying? What we're saying here is like, what is that saying in relation to the rest of what the episode is about? And the
Yeah,
answer is nothing. Not
yeah, it's
following
just-
the rules has no thematic value in relation to like
Yeah.
big tech or talking to
Selfishness
your mom
kills.
or running away from your problems. It literally is just.
I also
got
don't think
'em.
that Charlie Brooker, is that his name? Fuck. It's like I don't think it's like.
Yeah.
I don't think his point is you need to listen to tech companies more. Like I
Yeah,
don't like
yeah.
like that's not the point. Like his
No,
mistake
I
isn't
assumed-
applicable as a lesson or a commentary.
I just took away in the fact that like this guy deserved to die because he didn't follow the directions, and then just
This
moved
is
on
the
from
Andrew
there.
School of Interpretation.
Yeah, and that's like no, but that's literally what happened. He just
That's what-
showed up to
Yeah.
a fucking like a testing thing. They said don't use your phone. He said okay, lol, and used his phone and then died. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I guess the lesson here is don't be that guy. Don't
Well,
fucking
that would
not
be-
follow the
yeah, it
rules.
would be one
like,
lesson.
I
It's
think
like-
I think that
but the-
Andrew.
but the
what
VR
Andrew
is literally nothing.
exemplifies-
Like,
What I think what Andrew's point of view here exemplifies, though, is actually correct. That is what this episode is saying. Andrew is not wrong to take that away from this episode because that is the only thing that episode says.
And it's trash.
Which is
monster. Yeah,
Because
Like,
it's
the VR is
that's
fake.
poorly written.
yeah.
That's a
I
very
don't-
long walk to the tiniest
Now-
nothing point because it's such a
But
long.
yes.
That's a lot of episode
Yeah.
to get through. So
Now,
that-
and
once
I am
again,
baffled to
just
hear
the
that
entire
it's
simulation
popular.
part has nothing to do with that outcome.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. I am baffled
It was
to
it's
hear it,
it's
would be
the
a
it was
good
all a dream
thing.
episode.
Like
See,
I just
this is
watched.
why.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say I just literally watched a horror movie where that was the premise, where like it's
Yeah.
just a guy hangs himself, but in the brief flash of him doing that, there's like this entire cool, interesting movie happening, and then it just cuts back to the end where it's like, no, actually he was just dead. And you're like, oh, okay, thanks.
I mean, I
guess.
think
I-
I think you
the-
can still
the
construct
funny thing is that
meaning and
I
make
think-
that powerful,
I
but
haven't
they just don't.
I haven't actually seen that movie, but I think Andrew's talking about one of the most critically acclaimed movies in years that people love a
No,
lot.
it's definitely not. It
Oh, it's
absolutely
not?
is not. It's a B movie horror from China.
Okay,
no one
never
has ever
mind.
seen it. It's like some dusty shit that like someone put in a shelf and forgot about. Like
Okay.
there's no way anybody has like watched
I
this
thought
thing.
I still haven't watched it, but I thought that Andrew was about to get a lot of shit for like being like, yes, stupid movie. I'm thinking of ending things.
No, it's not. It's not.
No,
But-
it's just like that's like that premise though is like so. I don't know. It's so like it sucks too because I genuinely like the VR segment. I think the
Mhm.
horror writing in it or the horror cinematography in it is really good, but it just has no fucking value in the entire
none at
wrapper
all,
that it's
yeah.
stuck
No.
in. Like if you had made that a legitimate thing and changed what the monster is to be something more tangible, yeah, great.
Thematically relevant.
Yeah, thematically relevant.
Hell,
that
the
would
newer
be
the newer
fantastic.
season has 2 horror episodes that actually have a point.
So specifically, like for context here, the VR was supposed to show him all of his fears, but exemplified. Like it was a VR that was
Yeah.
progressively, it was randomly generating based on your own brain's fears. And so like if you're scared of spiders, then like every room is full of cobwebs, and then like things like that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like such a cool premise. I love that. Let's get into like I don't
That's
know.
the
You're
type of
getting
game
to
that
like
people
the-
keep promising to actually make,
Yes.
and they usually
Yes,
never come out. They're usually like from
also,
the like
dude-
PT clones era.
But
Are
the
you
thing
scared
that-
of clowns or needles? Are you scared
Yeah.
of spider or saw?
But a
Until
good,
dawn.
but a genuinely good question to ask is: do you actually want horror games that push you on something you're terrified of? Like, do you want something that makes you so terrified you might shit yourself? Like, I don't think you genuinely want that.
I created a horror game you're statistically guaranteed not to finish.
Yeah. Or like, but you could talk about the fact that like realism is like VR and its realism can be used dangerously. Like you can be literally hurt people with this thing. Like that is a scare, and that's what I thought the premise was.
But
and then
none
when
of that's
the end is like, oh,
because
he died. I was like, what? He died of what?
Well, I think even further there, like a big issue is that like it sets up the whole time that his fear is for his life and like moving forward with it and like communicating with people. And none of that is part of the escapism that kills him. It's just like, oh, well, I guess he brought his phone in.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's a dumb, bad episode.
Yeah. But I'm scared to hear that people think it's like a good episode.
Oh, yeah.
It's, like,
it's still one of the top rated episodes of the show. People
like,
always bring up as being one of the best episodes. And it's frustrating
like
because that means one of their favorite episodes of the show is one that doesn't get its own show. Like it doesn't.
That's literally the
like
episode I would
fit
tell
in the
people
show
to
it's
skip.
in. Yeah.
Like each season, there's an episode to worth skipping, and that's one of them. Like, don't watch that episode.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately, like, it's fine to have bad episodes of things and to like.
Yeah, it's an anthology. It's guaranteed.
Yeah. But I think this is actually why I get really frustrated when like every single time we talk about something like this, people are like, well, art is subjective. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is, but you're like not understanding what we're saying here, because like you can still just actually be bad at constructing something, and no amount of people liking it or seeing what it was trying to say doesn't make it more well constructed. Like that episode is just poorly written.
Doesn't make it immune to criticism. It just means that your arguments need to be subjective as well.
It's in particular because it's not like you like found a random YouTube video and we're like, wow, some crazy 20-minute animation with no context. I guess you can draw what you want from it. It's like this is a multi-season show with a thematic through line. There is a thing that episodes
openly trying to communicate things.
Yes. Like on its face, episodes are trying to make a point. And so you can make a point badly that is much more gradable.
Yeah.
Like that is much less subjective.
Bad at communication. Like that's just a thing things can be. It's okay.
And like people
it doesn't mean
simultaneously
bad for liking it or something. It just means that the show's not very good at it. It's okay.
That's the problem. That's the problem, is that people would associate like you saying I didn't like that episode with like you who likes it. I hate you. You're an
bad.
idiot.
You're a bad person.
You? And it's like, I don't care about you, dude. I care about you literally less than I care about the episode I hate. Like it doesn't. It's not about you. It doesn't matter. It's just I just don't like it. I don't like that piece of shit art. Like,
but what's funny is that like when I write about stuff, I'm more confident these days about writing positively about things, even though writing about positive things, writing about things positively is more challenging because it requires, because it's always, you're always interpreting stuff and being sincere and so on. Whereas like, it's much easier to write like this Monster Hunter movie is bad and just rant about it for a while. The problem is that when I know people are going to watch, I then get really insecure about like, what if I just didn't get it? What if I just didn't get it? I need to triple check. Like, what if it's actually really clever though? What if I just missed it and I'm the guy who's embarrassing today? So it's like every form of negativity. It always actually, it could always like I've seen so many. It's like I don't want to point out specific people, but there's just like. There's been a lot of reviews of things that like especially during Matrix Resurrection when Matrix Resurrections happened, there was a lot of like this thing is stupid type videos from people that largely are respected for their film reviews, and some of the takes that came out of that were like, oh, you didn't watch the movie. Like did you get bored and take a bathroom break in the middle of the movie and then not check? Because like there's like basic factual errors in this, let alone your read on the themes and what any of it was going for. It's like you can criticize Matrix Resurrections, but some of these videos that were made about it were really embarrassing because of how just anti-intellectual they were essentially. And like the act of being there's like it's like ranting about Zero Escape too. Like there's anything like negatively ranting about something can very easily be like, well, if you're not careful, it could be like the well is poisoned and you're just looking for more ammo because you're already ranting about the thing anyway.
Yeah.
And that can make you look really dumb really fast. And
Yes.
that's less avoidable in real time stuff. But in a scripted thing, I get way more paranoid about like, but what if I'm just wrong? What if I'm just wrong? But like,
Yeah.
Keith,
then
you
I see the
literally
stuff
wrote
that
about-
people make on YouTube and see these videos be high rated and on successful channels, and I'm like, motherfucker, these guys don't even try, or they're upsetting, or they're just upsetting. Like when I talked about upsetting takes earlier on Black Mirror, there's an episode where these I don't know if they're American or UK or whatever, I don't know, the soldiers are I think they're hunting down aliens in the Middle East or something. Like evil monsters. They're shooting monsters, literal monsters. You're like, what's going on in this episode? And the reveal over the course of that episode is that the military has supplied them all with augmented reality that makes enemy combatants that are human look like monsters. And so it's a dehumanizing thing to better enable the wholesale slaughter of people for the state. And it's
Which
like,
is a thing.
Yeah.
and it's
We
like,
do
oh, this
that
is
all the
upsetting.
time.
Well, yeah, it's the equivalent of drone strikes and stuff like that, where
Yeah.
like increasingly
also
more and
what
more
they do.
civilians are being killed by people. Well, it's also what we do with propaganda and so on. But it's like,
and with the actual training of the military as well.
Yes.
Like they are conditioned to not think of them as people.
yes, but this is a
there's a
case of like
relatable
literally like removing all
It's
hesitation
literal,
by
yeah.
making them into like the Zerg.
Yeah.
And when, in the video that I listened to about this one, this person wished that there had been more nuance and more gray area with the technology, like more debate and more like they want the
debate,
presentation of the idea that using augmented reality to trick soldiers into dehumanizing enemy combatants and slaughtering them more easily should have had like a back and
It has
forth.
positive.
And I'm
It
like,
has
what
si-
the
it has-
fuck? How
has
do you
good
make a
side.
video like this? How do you miss the whole point of the
Yeah.
episode? How do you think the episode's like missing the opportunity for a wider discussion on how to better have the state like like someone
think
did
everyone
not
here-
someone did not grow up reading All Quiet on the Western Front. They're like, Jesus Christ.
I think some people also just are bad at I think people are bad at making arguments, and I mean this in relation. You mentioned Matrix Resurrections. I think Matrix Resurrections sucks. I think that's a bad movie that is very, very bad at telling its story.
Is it the
That
second?
is not to say that I that's the last one, the fourth one,
The last one.
the
Oh, I
new
thought- I
one.
thought- yeah.
I think that movie
the
sucks.
new
I think it is
one.
very
Right,
bad,
right. I haven't
but
seen it yet.
I don't think it's bad
I
because it's
agree.
like there was no point. I think it was just bad at making its point. I think it doesn't really. I know what it's trying to say. I think the structure of the film is bad. It has bad performances, poor cinematography. I don't think it really makes its points well. Like, I think that's the issue with it. So it's fascinating when I'll use like a really obvious touch point here. People will be like, The Last Jedi sucks. And I'm like, why do you think it sucks? Like, is there an argument to be had here? Are we going to discuss something meaningful about how it fails to communicate? And then people will be like, in one scene, you can see Laura Dern mouth the pew pew sounds of her gun because is she even a professional actress? And I'm like, all right, you have nothing to say here. The necklace shouldn't fall in space. I'm like, okay, you literally don't know how to make a fucking argument. Like, you have no idea what this movie was about. why things structurally
And
were the
Andrew
way
was
they were,
there,
what it
but
was
I sat
saying.
through a podcast where we tried to record about it Last Jedi once, where the people in that podcast spent a half an hour talking about how stupid the ships were at the beginning of Last Jedi, and I'm like, okay, everyone on this podcast but me watches movies wrong, and this is
and people can
infuriating
literally
discussion.
watch movies wrong. Like, I'm sorry to say to people, but you can literally just not get something. You can not have the language. You can not. When I go into a wood shop and I try to use a saw and I slice the leg off of a table that I'm building and the leg is too short, I don't say the table saw sucks. I say I'm bad at building a fucking table. So it's like it's possible to have a knowledge gap and not be good at decoding and encoding art in movies and stuff.
That's why I don't have like a channel where I talk about anime, even though I love anime and watch it all the time. I don't have that. I just cannot talk about anime critically like that. I don't have the skill set to do it, and that's fine.
You could absolutely do it. You just
I can train myself to, but it's
you
not
just need
necessary.
to take the piss.
Like
just
my
say the
enjoyment
wildest thing.
But the thing too is like my enjoyment of a thing doesn't need to be validated by other
It
people.
doesn't. Yeah,
I don't
Yes,
need other people to
exactly.
tell me that like, yeah, this shitty harem anime I watched actually is trash. I know it is. You don't need to reinforce that to me. I'm not stupid, but I still
Yeah.
enjoy how dumb it is. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing is like some people don't understand that takeaway. Like you don't have
Yeah,
to be
completely.
a media mogul or whatever when you watch something and get all the intricacies.
But
But
also,
you also don't have to go on the internet and tell people that you are a media mogul when you're not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Because the thing is, making an argument about anything, it doesn't have to be media. Media probably is harder than normal things. But making an argument is something that a lot of people just don't have the skill to do, or
Yeah.
maybe they like with a certain amount of introspection, you can eventually get to a point where you can make an argument. But the back and forth of a conversation requires practice and requires
Yes.
honesty in a way that's not, I'm not saying people are evil, although there's a lot of evil people, but like, how often have you guys come across somebody, you're arguing to them and you just make an argument that it's not even about invalidating what they just said, it was just challenging what they just said, and they just double down and say the same thing again, and it's like, that's
Yeah,
the most
no,
basic
exactly.
like
They start
interchange
repeating
between humans.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just saying,
literacy,
let's talk.
calling
know what
it
I mean?
media literacy is important because the important part here is that there's a reason we measure literacy by certain levels. Like literacy
Yeah.
isn't just the ability to understand language, it is how strongly you can understand language. And so like
How you can communicate it, how you can
you can
disseminate it. Like
yes, exactly. You can literally you can be media literate and understand a movie, but you can also be media illiterate when it comes to explaining a movie to somebody.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
it's totally normal. Like it's fine. Not everyone is a fucking movie critic, you know? Like
Yeah.
I think it's
I just
interesting too, because people also like I think a lot of people tie their enjoyment of a thing to what a thing is or like what it's doing. And like I use this example a lot. I think I've even said it on this podcast, but like I love the N64 Castlevania games personally. They're really important to me. I have a story with them. Like I played them with my parents. The art and the crunchiness of the audio and the stock sound effects and the wonky cameras and the low quality 3D. Like I find it all like impressive, and I think that like a lot of the ambition of that game like outshines what it actually is. You will never see me arguing that those games are actually good because I happen to enjoy them. Would I say people should give them a try because they have elements that I find enjoyable that they might be able to get some enjoyment out of? Sure. Structurally, those games are a fucking mess. Their game design is terrible. Ergonomically, they're a nightmare. Nothing I feel about them changes that. Absolutely fucking nothing. And that doesn't hurt me to say. I'm not in pain because of that. They exist as a tangible, concrete object that is observable by all
but
people.
it also took
Yeah.
you something else other than just playing the games to realize all that you're saying, all the downsides to those games. You couldn't just
Sure.
You didn't grow up loving those games and being like, oh, but the game design is really bad and the art direction.
But I mean, I'm sure.
wrong.
I mean, there were points when I was playing them and I was like, oh, the camera doesn't work. This is frustrating. Or like, why does it work like this? And it's like, ultimately, yes, you can just have a face value enjoyment of something and that can be your entire metric. But also, people speak with authority about things that they're not trained to speak about, and they should probably just read a fucking book. Like, they should just learn how to talk about the things they want to talk about. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the
Speaking of things that I wanted to talk about, I wanted to just mention Celeste and the point where I think the game just sort of like clicked for me. Because I was watching,
Mhm.
I didn't play Celeste blind. I watched Keith's Let's Play up to episode 13. And there's this huge level, I think it's the Mirror Temple, called Mirror Temple, where Celeste mostly carries Theo around. Theo is stuck in a crystal. And Theo is the best character. Well, Celeste is the best character. Or Madeleine. I call her Celeste, but she's Madeleine. You can actually change her name, can't you? In the game.
I have no fucking idea. I can't remember.
Yeah, still Madeleine, the main character. Theo is such an amazing person, and he's very supportive. It's like the whole dialogue that happens after the Mirror Temple is about him supporting Celeste because it's an expository dialogue. But the thing that clicked for me, and this sort of goes back to the sort of like the subtlety of themes and things. It's not that Celeste is a very complicated story, but it didn't click to me until Celeste says a line where she goes, maybe this is all pointless, because she has this big dialogue with Theo about feeling insecure, feeling lost. She's exposing the motivations for her being in the mountain and all that sort of stuff. And Theo just replies, "You just saved me. What are you talking about? What do you mean this is all pointless?" And he doesn't really push the themes all that much, but contrast that to what happened for like an hour before, because you are playing the Mirror Temple. It takes a while. Contrast that dialogue with the level where she literally carries Theo, a big ass man, inside of a crystal, on her shoulders and throws him all over the place. And she's from a gameplay perspective super strong, and she's depicted as being super strong because she does all these amazing feats of strength. But she it's so beautiful and understated as well, because they don't mash on it. The contrast is beautiful, and it's like the point of the
great
of the game
ludonarrative
is that,
design.
Yeah, I love that. And it was like, wait a minute, this game is amazing. I need to play it, and I did, and it's amazing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I mean when I say like games shouldn't just be story or just be gameplay. They should be telling stories with their gameplay. That's the thing that makes games good, and all games can be this. Like people have this weird idea. People have this weird idea that it's like, well, it's not trying to be a cool ludonarrative. It's just trying to be a good story. And I'm like, yeah, but it like could be both. Like nothing is stopping it from being both, other than people just like being bad at game design. Like that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's whatever.
It's this
like
weird,
it could have been better. It's fine.
Game pro way of reviewing games, where it's like, here's its sound score, here's its graphics score, here's its gameplay score, here's its fun factor score, and they all look like the fucking Airheads logo.
Exactly.
Fun factor in the gameplay.
Yeah, there was gameplay and fun factor as separate scores in Game Pro. It was like sound, graphics, gameplay, fun factor, and like maybe overall or something, and it was at a 5.0. And it was just like a little wigged out little like face of a guy where like maximum score was like his head was exploding like an Airhead logo.
Yeah. It is very weird. It's like people have just like taught themselves to not look at things holistically, and maybe they should just like look at the full picture and like see what things are saying. They'd probably get a lot more out of both art and games and their hobbies if they just did that.
Oh, 100%.
Like you can still talk about elements of a thing. Like you can still acknowledge, yes, the cinematography of this movie, but like the cinematography is in service to something. Like a movie is collectively making a point and an experience, and games themselves are also meant to be a collective thing, not a series of segmented elements to be judged independently and never mixed.
Yeah. I mean, it also speaks to like how people struggle to view things. Like people will be like, why? I can't believe Suicide Squad won an Emmy or won an Oscar. And I'm like, yeah, it won an Oscar for costume design and makeup. It was one of 3 things that were nominated. Of all of the things, it was the most technically proficient in this field. The movie is still trash garbage. I think everyone would agree, even the people that gave it the Oscar for makeup. But that's what it was being awarded on. That doesn't mean that the whole product is like suddenly an incredible film or something. And of course, obviously there are like issues with the Oscars. I'm just using that as an example here.
Yeah.
Like people forget how to holistically look at things. And then people also try to box things too finely. And it's like, you don't know how to just see things for what they are. It's very odd.
I will say that, like, on a side, a very obvious but annoying side problem of that is any kind of award is used in a marketing sense without the context necessary, and I hate that. I hate when it's like an Emmy award-winning movie. I'm like, for what? What did you get? Yeah, what the hell
design.
Did you... Yeah, and it's like, oh, we got it for box art. I'm like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm not here for the box art.
You won't believe how good the audio mixing was.
Yeah, like but that's the only reason I could say
audio
like people would be upset
yeah,
about something winning an Oscar. We're like, this sucked. I don't want that movie to win. It's, yeah, I agree with you. It's sucky. It shouldn't win it, but it won the category it was assigned for. So it is what it is.
Audio mixing is underrated. I was analyzing Baldur's Gate's audio the other day, and my god, that game's audio mixers are my gods of audio mixing. Seriously, they are. The game is just incredible on the frequencies. Like all the frequencies are perfectly balanced on the, like the sound effects and the voice. It's just incredible. So professional.
Never had an absolute lie. It is a loud as fuck game when you start it.
Well, yeah, it
the
is
music
loud.
that plays at the intro scene is very loud.
To
It's
God,
loud,
if
but-
somebody doesn't figure that shit out, I've had that happen to me enough times on movies, on video games. Somebody starts these games.
It's not
and
a
they're
BioWare
like,
loud. It's not
100.
BioWare
And
loud. It's a little loud, but it's not BioWare loud. BioWare loud is
if my headphones are on at 100, right? They're at a normal level. and I start the game and it feels like you put the sound at 100 too, I'm going to die. Like, start all game audio at 50 and then ask me to turn it up. Like, I don't need it to, don't start your stuff at 100 and don't make your music especially more than 100.
Yeah,
like,
actually, this is a PSA. Fucking, you know, at the start of a game when you first boot up a game and it's like, set the brightness.
Yeah. Put the
Fucking
audio
give
there.
me volume
God,
sliders. Give me a master volume, audio, dialogue. Allow me to turn subtitles on before the game fucking starts. Like, oh,
you're just talking.
I'm
just saying that because
happy.
you're playing Vampire Bloodlines. That's why.
Yes, and when you start Bloodlines, the title music is deafeningly loud.
Again, I'm telling you, it's a problem. Every fucking game has this weird, annoying, loud ass fucking starting music. And again, I don't care if you just started your game at 50 fucking volume, and then I would go like, huh, it's kind of quiet. Maybe I should turn that up.
But let me cycle through the list, have it be like ambient, voices, sound effects, music, and then whenever one of those is highlighted, just like play a line of dialogue if it's someone talking so that I can audio out the dialogue, and then have the ambient there, hear the background birds chirping, then hear the music swinging across the river, and then it's just like, you know, go through all that shit. And then at the bottom have a master volume so that I can hear all of them at once so I can see if it's fucking balanced. Just do this, game designers, please.
Yeah. You have to imagine that the start of every game is what is going to be used in a saw trap, and if the audio level is too high, it kills your loved one. Like, that is the way you need to make these starting menu music. Like, calm down, dude.
So brutal.
I get it. I trust
it. I don't think it would work for BioWare because that likely would still be less worse than working at BioWare. At this point,
I honestly don't think between BioWare and Bethesda, neither of them could do anything at this to be better or worse than they currently are. They could literally just throw cardboard on the ground and call it a game, and someone would go like, I don't know, it's kind of a 7 out of 5. Like,
that is very true.
Ridiculous.
I agree with this.
Like, it's fine. They're just little anomalies in the industry. They'll stay there forever, being their whatever they currently are selves until they die.
In regards to BioWare, it might have been because they worked with Atari for a brief while, and Atari had the worst sound logo.
I think it's because no one in BioWare is the same anymore.
No, but it's just like a company tradition, you know. Make the first sound game make the sound test.
Like, Sega was a good example. You turn on, or like old Nintendo and Sega consoles used to do that. They would shout at you in the beginning. You're like, oh! Like, it would prep you ahead of time to know exactly how loud your TV was.
You're trying to play games late at night and you accidentally have the volume at normal, and then you wake up everyone in the house because Sega. Yeah. It's just like, fuck.
It.
Like, oh my god. You just hear like the footsteps of your dad, like. You're like, ah!
my TV, when it didn't have a mute, it just had like a potentiometer where you go louder or quieter, and the least it would go, it would still be so loud that it would literally wake up my mom, and she was on the other room. And it's one of those old ass TVs where the channel switching did that clack 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 sound, and it had one speaker to the side. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, mine was always the getting on the internet in the middle of the night, like dial-up internet. Yeah, you have to like, because it'd be like blasting. So you have to like take the speakers out of the computer, you have to take them out, go on, sign to the internet, and then you'd be set to go. Just loud noises are awful. Don't make loud noises and things. So always make it like half. I don't want to be startled by loud noises. All right.
Unless you're playing a game that is meant for startling.
Just never. I just never want to be startled by loud noises. This is like why I never wanted to finish like Five Nights at Freddy's or anything. Like I beat the first game literally out of spite to prove that it wasn't hard. And then I just from there was like, I'm not going to play a game where it goes from 0 to 100. It's awful. That's not scary. That's like, that's an assault. That's a crime that you've committed. You've tried to like deafen me, and I'm not going to stand for it.
We were insulted when we saw the recording of Five Nights at Freddy's, and its audio is basically so quiet that there's not even a waveform, and then it's literally 100% volume for just like it literally like there's also not a ramp up or ramp down of the sound that every robot makes. It's just it's just a rectangle.
Yeah,
it's just a rectangle of going from 0 to 100, then from 100 back to 0 volume. It's just the worst. I hate it. It makes it's so awful. Viscerally unpleasant that I never want to play a single FNAF game after having experienced one death. And we had the least scary possible death because our first experience with Five Nights at Freddy's, having just tried the game out without the context of watching 100 Let's Players yell at it and knowing how to play the game already, is that we just ran out of power. Like, oh, we gotta look at all these different places, I guess, and just try to catch him and like close the door when he comes out. Like, we weren't like keeping the doors closed or anything, but like just the act of like interacting with the game regularly makes you run out of power.
Yeah.
So we got it's like the most telegraphed, boring, slow ending where the monster appears in front of you and plays a jingle while the eyes are flashing in the darkness, and then it does the scare after telegraphing it for 10 seconds straight. So it's the least possible scary death. But the audio was so off-putting that we're like immediately like, I don't want to play this game ever again. What the fuck? Why would you do this?
You can add a compressor to your sound chain, and
it's already as compressed as it possibly could be.
Yeah.
No. A compressor is the other way around.
A limiter.
Yeah, limiter would work as well, but I think compressor just to bring the quiet sounds up so you can end the
just
loud
play good
sound.
Games. That's my response every time. Why would I fix? Why fix a bad game when you can go play a good game?
Good games not made by bigots.
That too.
Good games rare.
Yeah.
Gaming.
Yeah, Scott. Everything about Scott sounds like bad news. So
how could you say that? He's a beloved icon in children's media.
Most of those aren't great people. Sure that's not a good pool to draw from.
What? Like, Jim Henson's a good guy.
He's dead.
Yeah.
Wow. Just because he's dead, he can't be a good guy? People can still be good after death.
You're talking about supporting people. You can't support Jim Henson. He's dead.
Well, fine. Mr. Rogers.
He died too.
Isn't he dead as well? Yeah.
Okay, fine. But the guy who does painting, like
he's also dead.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's their fault. Maybe they shouldn't have died, and then we'd have good kids television programs.
Yeah, maybe they are bad people for dying. We fixed it.
Yeah, we fixed it. There.
They've been replaced by charlatans. That's what we're saying.
My bad. I'm sorry that all the good people died already. Jeez.
Truth.
Maybe next time raise some better ones.
Next time? You mean in the next universe?
I don't know. I mean, you got today.
Just
they're kids today.
I'm not raising
and
shit.
all you're doing is letting them watch. I don't know. What
you can't make me.
Paw Patrol.
Oh no, there's worse stuff than
Mickey
Paw Patrol.
Mouse.
Paw Patrol is real bad, but there's so much worse.
Pokemon. I guess Pokemon's probably not very good lessons. Just talk about like.
It's better than Paw Patrol.
Is it? Is Pokemon better than Paw Patrol?
It's about learning 100%. A trade. And caring about animals.
Paw Patrol is about the cops, dude. Like nothing that the Paw Patrol are. ACAB counts
Paw Patrol is basically a show about
Yeah.
teaching children that the cops are cool and good and the main character.
But they're all animals.
What?
Yeah, they're cops though.
Yeah, but wait, that seems kind of dangerous. Actually, don't cops kill their dogs all the time?
They do.
Yeah.
Wait, what kind of show is this? Are they not?
These are
showing kids.
These are talking child soldier animal dogs.
Oh,
would you like to know more?
Okay, well. I'm gonna scroll past this BuzzFeed article. Actually, I don't know. It's just I can't imagine what isn't it. Just, is there any like does Blue's Clues still exist? I don't know. Was Steve? I think
it does. Isn't it like its third or fourth host? I think they did a reunion with all the other hosts, and like Steve was wearing a hat because he's bald. He's very old now.
I don't keep up on this shit.
He just like takes his hat off and like Blue's paw prints on top of it. And, like it's a clue. It's male pattern baldness.
Celebrating 25 years of Blue's Clues with Steve, Joe, and Josh, September 8th, 2021.
Years.
What are we even talking about anymore? I've lost the thread completely.
Any of this stuff.
We
were talking about the quality of media literacy.
Here, I'll show you Steve and his hat.
I watched Teletubbies and Sesame Street.
I don't want to see Steven's hat.
Look at Steve's hat and his cartoon notebook. I like their notepad still.
Wait, what the fuck's wrong with the dog?
Yeah,
Why does it look like
Blue
that?
is CG now. Blue is no longer Blue is no longer a South Park animation.
I thought this was like an HD render. Oh, it's not. Wait, they got rid of like the drawing? That sucks.
Yeah, Blue's a 3D model. 3D? Yeah, Blue's a 3D model now.
With fur and stuff?
Yeah. His little 3D model. I mean, I haven't watched it, but I've seen images of Blue.
Damn.
Blue used to be a little like choppily animated 2D character that reminded me
Yeah.
of like South Park's animation style.
He's
I
fantastic.
don't know how accurate that is. But yeah, the hosts age out. Every single image of Steve is him like in a trench coat and a hat, like this old man. It's very funny the more you see him around.
I only know the one.
It's crazy. These look like Nintendo renders.
He looks like he's played
Wait,
by
do they have the
Dana
Friends
Carvey.
Why are they using the Friends font for this?
I can't get over how much Steve looks like Dana Carvey now. Is that his name? Is that Dana Carvey? The Master of Disguise guy?
I
Wait
do
a
not
second.
know.
I just realized how old is this dog?
Yeah, it
He's
is Dana
20?
Carvey.
A 20-year-old dog?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's
He
in
looks
dog
to me
years.
like the principal from Community, the dean.
I have not seen the
Is
principal
blue
from
a
Community.
curse? Is it like
Is
an
blue a
SOP?
curse?
Is it like
What
a
is
ring?
this thing? Like 3 people
the
have had gone
Twi'lek
through this.
Who's the
Advisor
latest
from
one?
Book of Boba Fett?
Who's the
That's the
latest one? The
other
one in green or
comparison.
blue?
Jim Rash.
Like blue is rife for like a Meat Canyon like Garfield reinterpretation where it's just this cursed amalgam.
Steve
Have
looks
you
like the guy who's
found
gonna-
Blue's clues? And they're like dragging
I'm
a body into the closet.
I'm sure you can find. I'm sure Lumpy made an animation.
I'm sure
like
there's been
that,
100
so-
creepy reinterpretations of Blue's
Yeah.
clues.
Is
I
Steve
cannot
the
get over
latest
this.
one?
Dude, Steve looks like the kind of guy that would be a villain inside of like a sitcom where his entire role is to either like fire the character or to charge them for money.
What do you mean?
Like-
He looks so nice.
Yeah,
No, he
looks like
he-
a guy.
No.
Yeah, he looks like an average like a pencil pusher. He looks like the kind of guy who's gonna tell on you to the boss for not doing your job. That's the kind of guy he
Oh,
looks like.
he has another picture. Oh,
Andrew's coming after Steve, I guess.
No,
For
it's not
con-
Steve.
for
Like Steve
context-
in Blue's Clues looks like a cool guy. He's like
For
a guy who's
context-
gonna cook you a good hamburger. But the other Steve, I don't know, man. This Steve.
Steve at current age is a pretty attractive dude. It's just that the getup they have him wearing to make him look fun and also young for the cartoon show when he's the oldest host returning is really
Is
yeah.
distressing.
goofy.
Oh no!
They
it
give
looks
him-
like Steve went through cancer.
They give
when
him
you do
a
a
they give him
comparison
a,
like that. Don't
they
do
give him a
that.
big hat and giant glasses and he's wearing like some cartoon clothes. It's just funny details. It's just
Honestly,
the way
I
he's
have
presented
to-
is very goofy.
I think the cartoon clothes are really good. I like the green shirt with the stripes on it, and I like the new host has the blue shirt with the blue. Well, it's a little too much blue, but blue stripe, blue shirt. That looks good. What's with this other guy with fucking Christmas presents on this? Is this like a fucking was he a
purple
one-off
guy?
character? Yeah, what's going on here?
No,
What's
he's
his
like
outfit?
I think he's the previous host.
He better not have worn
Yeah.
that the entire time. I hate that shirt.
I think the
That
purple
shirt's
host was the
awful.
second host and the blue host is the current host.
I'm assuming the blue host is the current. He looks the youngest out of everybody
Yeah.
here. So I'm
I don't-
assuming
I
he's
don't-
the
find
I
out
don't-
all of these people are in their 50s.
That's
I'm
what
not
I'm-
sure what a
Wonderful.
25-year reunion for a show functions at. Like what the point of that is for.
It's like one of those Doctor Who episodes where they get like
Yeah.
7
Yeah.
versions of the Doctor together.
Yeah, but like Doctor Who is usually for adults on some level, or at least they know that there will be adults watching that know all that. On some level, I guess that if you get the news out that there's going to be a reunion Blue's Clues episode, like just like with Bluey and whatnot, a bunch of adults are all going to show up to watch the reunion
Yeah.
where Steve comes back. So I guess, but
That's
like
what happened.
on its face, though, when it's like a children's show where it's for such a narrow age range that you watch it for about 2 years, then you age out. Essentially, that's what that like age bracket is for really young shows. You're changing eras of your life so rapidly when you're young that you quickly like opt in then backed out of these shows that like no one watching the show for its intended purpose has the memory or lifespan to experience the idea of a 25-year reunion. Like it's an incomprehensible concept and none of this makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like who are these people?
I think you're just jealous that
No one
Blue's
watches
Clues on the air
Blue's
for
Clues
25 years.
in the intended audience for long enough to get nostalgic about earlier parts of Blue's Clues the way you might like One Piece or something. Because you're
Well,
not supposed to
I-
watch it more than like 18 months. Then you're like, well, now I'm 8. I'm too old for this show.
yeah, I mean, I
You'd
think
be
about that for like
surprised how many adults came back for that reunion show. It was like
I'm
a
sure they
massive
did.
success.
Yeah.
With how much images I'm seeing about it, I'm like, that has to be the entire audience if this was adults.
I mean, it's pretty cheap too. You literally only have 3 people. There's no other like live action characters you had to worry about. You just had to corral 2 other guys. That's pretty easy. Like that's the best possible reunion kind of.
I'm sure Dana Carvey's not
setup to
doing
have.
anything these days anyway.
Wow, toxic.
I
How
don't-
dare you?
Is he? Is he doing anything?
I can't tell you. I don't keep up to date with. You know, he's his own person. He's living his best life.
The last thing he's credited for is the Secret Life of Pets in 2019.
Well, that was an animated thing, so he just did
Secret,
voices. I
yeah,
guess.
I did a voice. He hasn't been
Okay,
around.
okay.
You know, this guy's gone.
Well, maybe he's tired. Maybe he made
In
enough
fact,
money. He's living
He
comfortably.
did
doesn't need to...
he played Pistachio Disguisey in The Master of Disguise in 2002, and then didn't go feature in another movie for 8 years. It's just
Wait, what?
skips all the way to 2010, where he played George Bush.
What? Wait, what?
Sorry, I read that in real time. I wasn't ready for it.
He played George Bush?
It's somehow made funnier by the fact that like there's a pernicious rumor that they all had to like that they were filming the Master of Disguise turtle scene when 9/11 happened, and they all had to like have a moment of silence while he was in the turtle costume. Is like a very like it's a popular reoccurring rumor that's completely made up, but because of the timing of how when Master of Disguise was made, a lot of people believed it. So the fact that his next role was George Bush is not something I was ready for.
I love the idea that there's a guy in a turtle costume that's just like devastated by 9/11. Like what a what a weird view, like visually.
It's
just
like all
like-
those it's like all those Turning Red memes, because somebody was like, this movie's not realistic. If it happened during that time, they would have been devastated by 9/11. It's like, do you want a sad panda scene? Like it's like the equivalent of like fucking like like September 11th anniversary comes along and like Franklin is observing the anniversary in the show. Like Franklin the turtle is like sad about he's sad about the 10-year anniversary of 9/11 in the cartoon. Like what the fuck do you want? What are you
That would
insane?
be-
It'd be
I would-
This is like
So-
very specifically my type of humor.
yeah, it's absurdist humor that I would love to witness, but it's definitely like I imagine the person sitting down trying to pitch this to somebody would have the hardest time of their life. Like this would be such a fucking Sisyphean push to try to get some kind of like cartoon turtle to like bow and put his hand over his heart as the towers fall. Like what a scene to see. Like as a kid,
Have
you're just
I-
like, I don't know anything that's going on.
Have I told the story on the podcast about my friend? One of my best friends from high school and I have like a very whose line is it anyway style friendship where we have these ongoing bits. Have I ever mentioned this on the podcast? Have I talked about
I don't know
the
what this
Princess Diana
means.
bit?
No.
What?
No.
So my friend and I my friend and I he's one of my friends from high school who I wasn't in contact with for a very long time, and then we became friends as adults again, just like coincidentally. Like there was no bad blood. We just like went apart and then happened to run into each other, and we're just like friends now because we have a lot in common. But he and I continually, whenever we have the opportunity in shared settings, will go on these insane bits and we'll keep them running for years. And one of the bits that he does in mixed company is he has made it a character trait that he is like really passionately into and like strongly affected by Princess Diana's death. And so he has worked into his lexicon like all sorts of different manifestations for this. So he recently went like this is just an example. He went into a baseball game with some of his D&D friends in person. This is the first time they went out as a group like together to like go do something. And he doesn't really like sports, but the whole time he was there, he was like, I'm saving the seat next to me. Please don't stay here. And you know, when people were like, oh, is the seat taken? He's like, yeah, sorry. And then finally at the end of the game, they were like, who were you saving the seat for? They never showed up. And he was like, oh, Di was watching over the game. And he just does stuff like that constantly. He says, he says, go with Diana anytime someone leaves his house as a like superstitious goodbye, as if the spirit of Diana
Wait, isn't that a
watching
bad
over
thing?
wayward motorists.
Isn't that more of like a curse than a?
No,
No,
she's like a
no, it's
saint.
like it's like a
It's a
saint,
saint.
like a saint
Yeah.
who it was
He
martyred
literally
on the
died
streets, and yeah, and now she
A
watches
little.
over wayward motorists and protects them from car accidents.
Why would she
Um,
do that? She died that way. Wouldn't she haunt
because
people
she
and force them to go
because
off the
she's-
road?
That's how
Wow,
saints
you
No,
think so
because
little
she's-
of Princess Diana.
dare you.
exactly.
I think
The,
a
the
lot. I
patron
think she's
saint
now the
of this podcast from
She's
the
now, like-
very beginning.
I think she's the most
She's-
powerful deity. She's the patron saint of car deaths. Like that
Yeah,
is
but
the
yeah.
number one killer.
We actually
Like
have a temple
she's
for her
she-
here in
yeah.
Portugal.
So she protects wayward innocent passengers from the dangers of the road if you pray and go with Diana as you leave a house. But you have to say it every time, because if you don't, it's bad luck. That's the
That's fair.
superstition.
I mean,
So-
you
so
don't make the
anyway,
rules, so
My point is, one of the bits that my friend does is just sometimes he brings up just like people. One of his causes is just insane things like that, and the topic, the idea of someone in a like, you know, like an actor or like Franklin from the Franklin Show having or like Arthur from Arthur having like a memorial episode about 9/11 just strikes that same funny bone with me, because it is just that same degree of like, what a bit that would be if there was a memorial 9/11 episode of every single season of Arthur after 9/11 happened. like that is just
It's
a
the one show that has
profoundly-
not only established the tradition but stuck to it for a weirdly
Yeah,
long
exactly.
time, like beyond where
random
it seems
guest
appropriate
stars.
anymore.
random guest stars show up randomly, where it's like Arthur goes to a concert and he meets the aardvark Gerard Way, who was profoundly affected by 9/11 and went on to make Umbrella Academy. Like, just that being the fixation point in someone's life is like very funny to me. So,
I feel like
yeah.
I feel like the idea of like Arthur graduating school or something, and he's like, guys, I can't believe we did it after 9/11. I wasn't sure if I was gonna make it.
Yes,
through school."
exactly.
And you're like, oh my god.
That's the thing you're fixating on, Arthur? Okay.
Yeah, you're like, Arthur, I
Odd.
think the studying is what helped, not like the patriotism you had to get you through this horrendous event.
Exactly. It just strikes me in the same exact funny bone. It's just like very profoundly my sense of humor. I find that all very amusing.
I guess
But yes,
the
yes,
lesson here is you need to include more current world tragedies in children's cartoons.
The Blues
and it
Clues,
needs-
the Blues Clues 9/11 memorial episode is very profound.
I mean, this is to
Like,
this
I'm just-
day the single funniest moment of all of Echo was realizing just the dawning horror that 9/11 has happened in the Echo universe. Like when it's finally acknowledged, you're like, oh my god, all these animal people had a 9/11, and then you play Arches
Exactly.
and they acknowledge COVID, and you're like, oh my god.
Wait, what?
Wait, that's even more insidious because isn't COVID? Is it supposed to be from animal to person? How did that happen? How the hell did that happen?
Well, then clearly
Sorry.
animals can catch it, Andrew.
But not
I don't
all
see what the
animals
problem
get COVID.
is.
What the fuck? How does this make sense? Wait a second.
But
Wait a
it's not.
second.
It's not that deep. In furry media, animals just are people.
But wait, how did you get it? Because you had to have had a wet market. Do animals have a wet market where they sell their
Yeah.
young?
No.
What?
animal.
Animals
the
and furries both exist. Young furries aren't like a
don't
normal
like
puppy
that.
dog.
Like chickens eat chicken? Is that
We
is that
eat
okay?
monkeys in real life.
I don't eat people, Keith.
I know,
That you know of.
but we're not the
Well,
same
also,
thing.
I don't eat monkey either. I'm not supposed to eat monkey. Monkeys are.
Yeah, I'm saying
are
we're not the
totally-
same thing. It's like when
weird.
people always bring up the Goofy paradox. It's stupid because like Goofy and Pluto existing in the same universe is not a paradox.
Well, they're not the same breed
Are-
of dog. Of course, they're different.
It's
That's what they're saying. That's
it's the
what we're
point.
saying.
My point is that like all of the evolutionary ancestors and so on that we have also still exist, except for some that went extinct. But like us, they didn't. people keep conceptualizing a population as just being like, this animal exists as this animal, and then it evolved into that animal, like in Pokemon, and they just now all of them are that animal now. And it's like, that's not how diverging evolution works. It's like the other things still exist. Like our closest ancestors that we didn't personally kill are still here. And
I feel like I
same
would be a
goes
lot
for
more
a furry
affected.
universe. Like you could be a coyote man, and also there would still be coyotes in the Midwest.
I don't know, man. I feel like I'd be really affected by the idea of like being a dog furry.
Maybe
and
the
seeing
furry
dogs.
universe would be more
Like,
in touch with
oh,
nature, in that they'd be more proactive about conservative.
Obviously not. They had a fucking
Yeah, that's what I was
9/11.
gonna-
Like, what do
that's
you
what I was
mean?
gonna say. Like,
That's not related to nature.
That's all about oil and the destruction of the environment. Like, it's just a bunch
Yeah,
of
okay.
and COVID
Deeper argument than I thought this was going to have.
9/11 was about more than just oil, but okay.
well,
there's
Yeah,
not a
but
whole
he,
lot,
I
but
mean, he had more to it than I expected, though. I just didn't think that he was thinking on that level. It's like, how could the furry people be better? They did a 9/11, as I thought what he was saying.
Am I wrong in saying that there's not a whole lot of furry political stuff?
I'm sure there's a
Yes.
lot of it. It's just
I've never
different.
seen anything. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
There's
Well,
so much of it. Almost
would
all
imagine
furry
it's
art
not-
is like
yeah.
inherently political. It's very there's a lot of it. You're just not looking. It's okay.
I also don't think
yeah,
a lot of
fair.
it tends to be like that. I don't know, that specific, maybe. Like,
mean,
it's not. It tends to not be like always the same over the top stuff. You know, like
There
it's
is
not.
obviously
not-
there's things
yeah.
like Mouse comes to the top of.
Yeah,
comes to
but
the-
like
yeah, but
that's the
different.
point. Is like not every furry visual novel is like about the
Yeah.
Holocaust. Obviously,
Because the
real
real
Mouse.
there's,
implication
there's
of
other
COVID,
stuff.
I mean,
because
Yeah,
the
but
real
I'm-
implication of COVID happening in furry media is that there the social economic conditions that lead to COVID happening in the first place because of the pressure of humans cohabitating with animals in places where they normally wouldn't, because it's just the encroachment of industry into like forests and stuff in Eastern Asia,
Nah,
coupled
I
with the
think
fact that
it's-
people are underpaid and then have to eat whatever they can get their hands on. That's the problem with pandemics. That's how the HIV happened, and that's how COVID happened.
I like to believe it's because there was a sick bat and he didn't have any
No,
sick
that's
days
just-
left over, so
that's-
he came
that's
into
not even
work
just
and infected
one bat.
everybody.
It's not even
And
just
that was
one
That
it.
could
thing,
be
it's
it, Andrew. You
patterns.
probably that could have been it.
That's it.
That could have totally been it.
That's
There's no
exactly how
thought
it worked.
into it. It's just it happened. It doesn't interrogate it. It's just a societal, socio-political thing that happened in the background of the universe.
I am just devastated at the idea of like like the divergence of life is enough that there are furries, but also not divergent enough that 9/11 doesn't happen. Like,
Yes.
that's just such an insane
No,
thing to me.
You have stumbled onto the reason why this is profoundly funny.
I am
Yes.
terrified of the idea. Like,
you've
like,
you've
oh, it
caught
must
up
be
with the
true.
original joke.
all
Yeah,
all
it
all
was
realities
amazing.
end with 9/11 travesties. And it's like, what? Why is
It's
this
just
the
like,
Thanos snap
yeah.
of all realities? Like, what happened?
That's the canon
it's a
event.
fixed point.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
canon event. All realities, no matter what they are, must experience it. Like, what a terrifying. Now I'm just imagining, like, now I'm imagining Steve going through the Blue's Clues book, like, oh man, look at all the clues that we found. One of them's just like the Twin Towers. He's just like, oh, just like flips past it really quickly, like, just does oh, that
Yeah,
episode.
I had a bad feeling about this one, but I should have spoken up. We were so
Didn't
close
say
to cracking
anything.
this conspiracy.
It's onto it. He just didn't say anything to the feds or something.
It wasn't The Simpsons. It's Steve predicted 9/11 and didn't say anything.
Blue brings him a clue, and he's like, "What's this clue say, Blue? Jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. What does this mean?"
This is a bunk episode. This doesn't mean anything. The kids won't get it at all. Like,
See, this is what we mean this is what I mean when I say this is just very funny. It's just like a very absurd situation. Obviously, 9/11 and all these bad things, COVID, were like horrible pandemics in real life. I don't think anyone's making light of
it's
that,
not. It's
but-
not the event that's funny. It's the fact that it's a horrendous event inside of a place that shouldn't
the
have it in there.
juxtaposition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
it's it's the core comedy formula of "Don't hug me, I'm scared."
Yeah, it's
Yes.
Gap Moe. Like, that's literally all it is. It's just, you're like, what the fuck is this? How is this possible? But
It's
great.
reality.
Why is this detail here?
Yeah.
It's reality
Yeah, no,
creeping into the children's show that's specifically defined by its ability to filter out so much of reality to begin with.
I would
So
hate that.
funny.
I would hate to like, I don't know, like be an adult that
wouldn't-
that all that happens, and then a kid walks up, is like, "What's a 9/11?" You're like, "Why? Why do you know that? Who told you?" Like, you're like, "Oh,
it's
this
a
is the
fast
funny
food chain.
cartoon I watched." It's like, "What the fuck? This is an aardvark. What the fuck's he doing?" It's like,
Like, who told you and then did this to me by telling you?
yeah.
Is he
It's,
telling
like-
you about capitalism?
I just like that. That would just be such a pain to endure. Like trying to work around that as part of society. I don't know. Just the idea of including it is more work than the idea of just never talking about it.
It needs to be
Like, do it-
abstract. Because
Yeah,
of
just doing the thing of like someone goes, "I wonder if 9/11 happened there," and you're just like, "I don't know, but we'll never know." And I think that's kind of okay, actually. Like you
No,
just
I don't
can
mean it like
live
that.
like that. Like it's
I don't
perfectly
mean it like
fine to
that.
not know that answer. Not every furry thing needs to be
'Cause-
science fiction. Like it doesn't have to be
It's
so
impossible.
Yeah,
detailed.
completely.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be detailed. Because it's impossible to
Just-
make fiction like that in like if even it doesn't have to be furries. It could be just like vampires in the modern world. Like
Because what was
Or-
it? There's
This
that commercial that exists. I think it's like WB Kids or something, where it made all of these like anime characters do the national anthem, and that was just like the most fucking terrifying thing. Where you're like, this is just all weird. This is like the worst feeling to look at. You get this weird, creepy like I don't think Ash Ketchum would actually say the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't think that's his character.
like that's in America.
Yeah.
in
That was definitely. I might have been either WB Kids or 4Kids. I can't remember which one it was, but
Oh,
they aired
no.
like a commercial where it was like Sonic, Ash Ketchum, somebody else. I can't remember, and it
But
was
it
like
Japanese. The Japanese.
yeah, it's all
national anthem.
Japanese anime, and they're all just they're all just doing the U.S. national anthem.
It's the wildest
just-
stuff. Holy crap!
Yeah, and they're just all. It's also their English voice actors saying that like singing the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever. It's just weird. It was like one of those weird. It's like 4th of July, haha, everybody. I'm like, this was irreparable damage you've done to this this character to me. Like, you cannot. I will not stand for the idea that this is real. Like, I don't think the Pokemon world has the U.S. national anthem. That just isn't a thing. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's real. Like, it's such a thing I don't want to think. I don't want to think about Sonic saying the national anthem. Like the idea that Sonic like I hate that. I hate the idea. It's like
No.
Like, what
countries are bad. No
I'm just
countries.
imagining like Eggman showing up. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Eggman, we got to say the national anthem." He's like, "What the fuck?" He's
Just
like,
in
"Shut
full
up."
like Urkel voice.
God, fucking.
I
what
pledge
is-
allegiance
oh.
to the flag.
Sonic.
Is that
Sonic
Sonic's voice?
having thoughts about the Gulf War is the funniest thought I've had in a very, very long time.
Well, he wouldn't like the Gulf War, and thus he wouldn't sing the national anthem.
Like,
the American.
like I feel like that's definitely the missing part of the live action Sonic movies. Did 9/11 happen in the live action?
Did
Sonic
9/11
movies?
happen in the Sonic movies? That's the question.
That's
Though,
an
to be
important
fair,
question.
in those
Is that-
movies,
is that,
Sonic
like,
I think is
part of the-
canonically only 10 years old, so he was born after 9/11. He doesn't have that cultural
Ah,
touch.
It's like,
Holy
is that
shit.
part of like Eggman's origin story?
I don't want to know the answer to this.
It's just
Oh my
Eggman's
God.
stupid little fucking cart just crashes through both buildings and he just keeps going. It's not even like a
Oh,
terrorist
no.
attack. It's just a dumb fucking
No, I
idiot
don't
driving
mean
his car.
causing 9/11. I mean
Oh,
experiencing 9/11 is like
And
a
Robotnik did
cornerstone in
9/11. I
Eggman's
was like, oh my
history.
God.
Like Jim Carrey, Eggman's lived through 9/11, and that informs part of his decision behind what he's done, akin to like the creation of My Chemical Romance.
Yeah. This is so funny.
That makes more
Jesus
sense. I thought it would be
Christ.
terrifying if like
No, I
Eggman's
don't
doing
mean
terrorism.
No, I mean there's that part of
I
Sonic
mean, he
Adventure.
is a terrorist.
There is
but,
that part
like,
of Sonic Adventure that gets too real, where there's just a bomb descending towards the city, and you see Tails look up in fear. And he just realizes that he's doomed and everyone he knows is going to die. And that's just a thing that happens in Sonic Adventure. And then you fix it. But for a moment there, it's the funniest cutscene you've ever seen. And it's terrifying and upsetting.
I'll get you, Hedgehog, with my missile that will wipe out Metro City. And you're like, oh my god, that's a whole bunch of people you're gonna murder. It's like, and he just like presses the button.
I saw that scene like when I was like 11, I think before 9/11.
That's incredible.
Let me make the point that if the Sonic movie, the live action one, was realistic, Eggman would be the president of the United States.
I was 8.
I don't think that's true. I don't think Eggman would want to be the president.
Eggman is like, yeah, I don't know about that. He's like a goofy, wacky science man. I don't know if he represents
industry murdering nature and stuff like
Eggman
that.
Eggman seems like his entire motivation is to wipe out specifically furries. Like that is his entire 100%. Motivation.
Yeah, he's the ultimate anti-furry and looks like them too.
He's anti-nature as well.
That's because the furries live there. He's burning their fucking houses down. Like that's his entire motivation.
I've never watched the anime. I only played the games.
All he wants to do is just like rule over Mobius, but these damn fucking furries keep telling him no. And so he's like, fine, I'll just toxic waste an entire area. Fuck you guys. Like he just absolutely hates the Mobians. Like that's all he fucking hates. He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care at all about
I would have
humanity.
watched the movie.
I just checked and
if you were the president.
I just checked and I saw that scene when I was 8 years old, 3 years before 9/11. So I was not yet emotionally prepared to process the extent of what I was seeing.
In fact, it prepared you for 9/11. You were able to grieve properly because of Sonic Adventure.
Sonic Adventure is a preparation tool for bad news.
I'm not misremembering it, right? Like that's like an upsetting moment in a weirdly real way, because it's just like a level of escalation you're not ready for, and they seem powerless to stop it in the moment. So it looks like you're just like watching Knuckles in Watchmen. Like no,
it's even like it's even worse.
Like the psychic blast is about to happen. You just you just gotta hug the closest person that you see, and then you just become a shadow on a wall.
Sure. Yes, I understood. I'm just the idea of Rorschach Knuckles being like, fucking Silver the Hedgehog is like, it never ends, and then walks by Shadow Ozymandias. Like it's just like so stupid.
Silver's Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, Silver's Dr. Manhattan.
What?
Shadow's Ozymandias.
Take this.
What an awful canon.
It's no use. Ready?
God, it's so funny.
I'm gonna die.
I think here it is. Yeah, here it is, right here. I found the cutscene for it.
I'm finished. Chaos was defeated, and now my egg carrier is ruined. No matter. I will destroy Station Square anyway.
If that missile is launched...
Ready? Fire!
Fantastic.
So upset.
It is very funny. Like again, because it's like Robotnik, and Robotnik's such a dumb fucking clown. Like everything, him showing up to just like big nose, dumb fucking egg body showing up like, I'm gonna kill everyone. And you're like, what? And he's like parked in the ground, like his cart crashed into the ground. He's like a man at his lowest, and he's like, I'm just gonna shoot a missile at the city and kill everyone, including myself. Like I can't live here anymore. And then he just like kind of floats away. And you're like, what?
It's not from the perspective of like superhero stuff where like, oh no, he's launched, the meteor's going towards the town, we've got to stop it, and they're all rushing into action and action poses. It's just fucking Tails defeated with a child's voice actor just looking at the horizon as everything he has grown to love comes to an end. Like, that's the scene. You're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this?
It's a lot.
It's
a lot, but you know what's great is that I like to believe that there is actually no tragedies in the Sonic universe because Sonic is there. So obviously Sonic is always there
because he's so
to save the
fast.
day.
He can be
He's so
everywhere at
fast.
once.
No, he's not fast. He gotta go fast. That's different.
Yeah. What?
He wasn't. He didn't used to be
What?
fast in the first 4 games.
What are you talking about? I used to be always.
Yeah,
What are you talking? What? Speed was literally like
slower.
the selling point.
Get out of here
He's
with this
faster than
ancient
Mario.
ass game theory video.
Yeah, what the hell? Are you talking about? Yeah, because like
So
it
actually,
is-
if you
it
check
is
the
move.
pixel data,
true.
it's actually
I am
slower
thinking-
than Mario in his original games.
I am thinking
Sure,
of though in that perspective. Absolutely, yeah.
But Mario's maps are like flat, and Sonic's
Mario's
maps
not-
are
Mario's
nightmares.
not very good. No.
Like it's much easier for Mario to maintain his momentum than Sonic, because Sonic is about just having an ADD overload the entire
No,
time.
You collect all the coins and learn all the
Ow.
spots of all the levels.
Coins in
Are you talking about
Sonic?
Are you talking about Sonic or Mario?
In rings. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Wow,
Rings-
fake
you-
fan.
You're golden
I'm sorry,
Sonic.
This
to get
is
to the
this
very end.
conversation. This conversation's lame. Instead of playing Sonic or Mario, you should play fucking Pseudo Regalia. That game fucking rules.
I want to play
That's
it
a furry
so
game that people should
bad.
play.
I have it. I'm
Also,
ready.
now you have your
kicks
answer,
ass.
chat, for why sad crying tales was the thumbnail this whole time, because I just decided it's going to be.
Damn.
That's funny.
You finally got
Wait,
the
wait.
reference.
9/11 question mark exclamation point red arrow.
No.
No. Oh God.
No.
That's interesting.
That's
an
the
interesting
podcast for this week.
title.
You can
Yeah.
email your questions to dialoguechoicespodcast@gmail.com.
You can email us about
Keith
our
will maybe
crimes.
read them.
I do not
yeah,
think
you
that
can-
9/11 jokes are inherently funny. I just think it is funny to have a cartoon universe and then establish seasons
Yeah, we-
into it that 9/11 happened in it.
Yeah, I think we've established that it's not the tragedy that's
No,
funny.
we're not
in
making fun of
location.
9/11. It's just that
Yeah.
a very specific real life formative experience that we had is always very specifically excised from these settings. So when if it does show
Yeah.
up, like it did in Echo, you're like, what the fuck? Wait.
Yeah, it's hard to
Yes.
understand if you didn't live through it at that
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
It's really hard to overstate exactly just how ridiculous the world became and was at this event that you have no concept over. You're just a child who's like, I don't know, some ugly buildings fell over. Good luck. Fucking GG. But then someone explains to you and you're like, oh, now my entire life has to change. Okay.
And then
Or like-
4.5 million people died for it.
Yeah.
Or what?
You can at Andrew on Twitter if you take
don't.
umbrage to him calling the Twin Towers ugly. And
What do you? They're literally the exact same towers. You couldn't even think of a different idea for the second one. That's not
Look,
okay.
Keith, Andrew,
the
the fact that they're the same doesn't
Yes.
make them ugly.
Make them
There's a lot of-
different. Come
No.
on, man. You have 2 towers. Make them different. Don't make them the
What a
same
missed
fucking tower.
opportunity.
Yeah, like
Wow.
now the one we're rebuilding is one fancy looking tower because they couldn't come up with a second one. So see, they knew their limits and they made one tower instead. That looks
what
really
is
good.
going on?
This has gone on for too
just
long.
saying.
We have to read it in. Send your questions to
Goodbye.
dialogchoicespodcast@gmail.com. I think. Wait.
Yes, it's dialogue choices.
Dialogue
at
choices
gmail.com.
podcast
Yeah.
at gmail.com. Not questions. There's no questions in the name. And dialogue is spelled the way that it is on your screen right now. Don't spell it the other way or it won't go to us. That's how that works. To ask better questions than what is your favorite game.
Damn,
'Cause-
got him.
We've done it already. See you guys next time.
Yeah, it's Danganronpa.
Bye.
Bye.